And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, it's Wednesday. We have our guest on Wednesday. Some people politicians, some are retired cops. I think we got a great show for you today. We got retired Detective Tillman, who's pretty much a staple in Brooklyn North in the NYPD. And apparently already getting some love in the chat as a legend. You're going to like him. We spoke to him offline. Really cool vibe. Chill guy. He's got a lot of experience. Very humble. Definitely well known in Brooklyn North and the NYPD, and considered a legend in the NYPD. So I'm excited about this interview. Definitely want to get to know him. So, John, good morning, brother, and retired detective. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time out to come here and memorializing your career. Let's just jump into it. Usually, we start out we want to get to know you, and it's significant and different for everyone why they joined the NYPD. So, growing up, what was significant in your life, if any, that geared you towards law enforcement and especially the New York City Police Department?
My parents. My dad was a type of guy from Georgia. It was three things I had with my dad. One of the things was fear, respect, and love was number three. He used to say, "You black and you poor, don't embarrass my name." I said, "Dad, that's 2 out of 3. I'm already wrong." And then he turns around and said, "JC, I'm going to hit you in the head." And he said, "I don't visit jailbirds." So out of that respect for him, I didn't want to embarrass the name. He said, "Be proud of your name." And that's all I did from day one. Has been proud of my name because of him.
Was he a cop? Yeah.
No, my dad wasn't a cop. My dad was a hardworking maintenance man. Was 32 BJ. He mopped floors, worked in various buildings and stuff, and never saw him miss a day from work. I knew his schedule. I knew how when he was leaving, when he's come back, he's like he go in, never complain. He always told me, "What you do for $5 an hour is what you do for $25 an hour." He said, "Work ethic goes a long way." And he saw that in me. Anybody when I was on the job, I didn't miss work. They had to force me sometimes to take vacation. And then when they did that transit overtime, I was the first one there. This is the first time I've been up this early since my transit days. Well, I didn't work in transit. Everybody thought I worked in transit because I was there all the time, twice a week.
Oh, really?
James, where'd you grow up?
They used to have this thing called Do or Die Bedford-Stuyvesant, Gates and Stuyvesant. If they ever make a movie, they'll call it 865 Gates Avenue. That's where I grew up. That's where I learned a lot of things. I wasn't from the streets, but I knew about the streets. I grew up in the era during the 80s. And if anybody knew anything about the 80s, everything changed during that format in the neighborhood.
When I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, early on, I used to play basketball you remember in Bed-Stuy, it had the Broken Down Boys and Girls Club. Around there, I used to play ball. Did you play ball or anything? What'd you do as a kid? Did you play any sports? What were you into?
I was into baseball and football. Basketball, I couldn't jump over a phone book, but baseball and football was my game.
And then so how was it growing up in Bed-Stuy? Like you said, I'm not from the streets. I grew up, I didn't grow up, I'm not from the streets, but I'm from the streets. Like what do you mean by that? Like are you saying your parents kept you in check? Like, and like what was the relationship you think in the neighborhood with the police department? Like what kept you, like what made you say, "Oh yeah, I'll join these guys"?
Well, during that time, the departments were separate. You had housing, you had transit, and you had city. So housing was different, and so they bother you, but they didn't bother you. City at that time was different. You have to really do something, or just be out there. They kept you honest. Transit was like a different entity. They didn't treat transit. Nobody treated transit cop the way they treated housing or the city cops, and so it was a little different. But going back to the neighborhood, the old timers that was older than us, they would teach us how to fight, even if we didn't want to fight. So they would form a cipher and stuff. A cipher is a circle where you couldn't run, and they just put you in the circle, and you had to fight. So after you get hit in the face a couple of times, you know how to start the bob and weave, and you know how it feels. you know, so you don't want to get hit again. You know, they used to, you know, like I said, I went to my bringing up in the neighborhood. I went to 308, which is up the block, and I remember it being in the second grade, and we, you know, when the teacher was out of school, they'll put you in 2-4. Nobody wanted to go to 2-4 because them guys was off the hook. They were just nuts. And if I walked with the teacher and I said, them guys are bad. The teacher said, yes. I said, they're going to go to jail. The teacher said, yes, most definite. The teacher wasn't lying. By the time we got into junior high school, half that, them 4 or 5 guys was already doing time in jail already. By the time we got into junior high school, you know, so I learned.
James, what was it like for you, right? Because right now, when it comes to recruitment in the police department and test taking, it's pretty much at this point, well, they can't really get anybody, and people are not fighting for the job, and we're not getting the best of the best. What was it like for you getting on the job right then? What was the experience taking the test? Was it very competitive? What was that experience like for you? And when did you get on the job?
Well, it was very competitive. 'Cause I remember when I took the test, it was over, I think, 50,000, 100,000 people applying for the test. And so I actually took the test in 95. I came on in 98. And to me, it was like I did security since 86 before I left to go to the service. And joining the NYPD was like my version of making it to the major leagues or making it to the NBA. That's how I looked at it. And I never looked back. You know, I would have still been in a job right now, you know, but it was time to move on.
So James, what was that like? Because you like we spoke offline, and prayers to Mayor Giuliani, right? And you and him had a kind of a special connection, right? And hopefully we're hoping he pulls through. You know, last I heard he was on a ventilator due to pneumonia down in Florida in West Palm. So, like you said, you did security. You were in the military, and I'd love to hear about that, like why you joined, when you joined. But what was significant about Giuliani and you joining the NYPD? Like, could you tell us about that? Could you tell us the story how you met the mayor and all that?
Well, I was working in the Empire State Building during the time they had like a shooting there. And I think like 4 people passed away from the shooting. And I was just doing the security there, and I responded to the location. I didn't know nothing about it, responded to the scene, anything like that. But I remember getting on the radio and I said, don't let nobody out, don't let nobody in. And I secured the crime scene up on the observation deck, located the murder weapon, treated people that was injured. Someone was injured from running. I remember it was a guy who ran down the stairs and he had got glazed in the chest, but the bullet didn't enter. He just got glazed. And then the then commissioner, Howard Schaefer, invited me down, and a couple other people from the Empire State Building down for, there was a thing in Times Square called Apple something, and invited us out to lunch. But then I was trying to get on the police department back then. And so one of Giuliani's aide introduced me to him. And he saw my what I was getting, my military background and everything. And he said, he said, you're going into the next class. And he invited me down, me and my wife, down to his second term inauguration. So I'm sitting there with all the chiefs at the department, but they had no clue I was going into the next class. But I was just sitting there, just having fun. They was calling me sir and everything. I said, no, you don't have to call me sir. I work for a living. That was just my attitude.
So going back to the military, what year did you go into the military? I know we spoke offline about where you were stationed. What were you doing in the military, and what traits and characteristics did you learn in the military that transitioned to the police department?
Well, one of the things I learned was discipline. You know, like one of the things I learned is that if you give me an assignment, I don't, it's not unlawful. I don't ask why. You tell me to sit there and guard this chair or sit there and do this. That's what I'm going to do without complaining. So sometimes there's a little difference. In the military, you don't ask why. I'm not taking away from guys who went to college or anything like that, but sometimes they want you to question everything that's being told to you. Sometimes you just got to fall back and just listen. I always tell people we have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 tongue. Sometimes it's best to have a silent tongue and just hear and see what somebody's saying. And the military trained me. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, which was a patch called Follow Me. It's an infantry unit. It was always something going back to my dad. I always wanted to prove something to my dad. So I decided to join one of the toughest units, in the Army, Fort Benning, shout out to Fort Benning, Georgia. Then I went to Fort Wainwright, which was part of the 5th Battalion, 9th Regiment. I was part of a regiment called the Manchu Soldiers, and I was ordered light. So we walked everywhere. We always want to show how big and bad we was to everybody. And then when we go into town as civilian, it was just that humble thing like, hey, I'm infantry, I'm 11 Bravo, here I am.
James, what was it like when you came into the department? You came in 98. There wasn't a lot of black leadership at the time on the job. How was that? Was it a culture shock for you coming into the department, or did you like fit in right away? Did your military background kind of prepare you for the police department?
My military background prepared me for it. When I was working at the Empire State Building, there was a lot of retired cops there. And they let me know, they explained to me, let me know about the job. They also said there may be times that you may not can't say nothing because you're still on probation, But if you have to say something, say something. And I was a retired detective there, and they all took me out to get something to eat when they knew I was going to the police academy. So everybody was giving me compliments, but this one retired detective turned around and said, I asked him, what would you do different if you were still in the job? He had this wine in his hand, and he said, you people would not be on the job. I just looked at him, I smiled, but I said, I'm here now. And that was it. I didn't let that deflect me, but it also gave me an idea to stand on what I may be facing and how will I handle it if I ever come across something like that again.
So you got on the job 98. You have military experience. You did security. So obviously, you were a hardworking man. One of our friends and listeners, KB, New York City, says hardworking man. So you got a great rapport, and I can see it already. And you're so humble about it. So tell us about it. So you came out, and what commands did you work in as a rookie, moving up the ladder? What kind of stuff did you do in the police department before you became a detective?
Oh, it was 83 Precinct. I enjoyed the 83 Precinct. It gave me the foundation. I did midnights, and just working with great guys in the midnights. Supervisors let you be adults. This like in the military. The first sergeant used to say, "We'll give you enough rope to hang yourself, but don't hang me with you." You know what I'm saying? So, but you had to maintain discipline and maturity and stuff. So, and working with picking out your partner or your partner picking out you, I got to be on the same page. I lucked out with great partners. One of my partners, his nickname was Tank. My nickname was Country, and he the one that gave me the name Country and stuff. Like I did anti-crime. I did that for 5.5 years. And I love anti-crime and stuff. And then you fast forward, I did anti-crime from 2002 to 2007. And some of the people that I associated with that I had locked up for guns, and I seen them, some of them 18 years, 19 years later, and they say, thank you. You saved my life. I wouldn't have this family if it wasn't for you, like I always say, doing the preventing things and stuff. But it was good. Anti-crime was fun. My last day in anti-crime, I'll never forget, we recovered 3 guns. That was my last day in anti-crime. Then I wound up going to the squad. Then I moved over to the 73rd Detective Squad in Brownsville, which I was experienced in Brownsville because I used to go to Thomas Jefferson High School. Anybody know about Jeff out in East New York? Sometimes I didn't want to get on the train. So, we walked back, me and my boy Terry, we just walked through. I went to school with Riddick Bowe, and before Riddick Bowe became who he was, we all used to walk down Livonia in Georgia. I get on the L train, he goes home.
What was the 83 like? Oh, I'm getting a little feedback. You guys hear me or no?
Yeah, you were getting a little reverb.
Sorry, that threw me off. What was that like stepping in? How old were you at that time? I'm not sure if you said stepping into the 83 Precinct, and why exactly did they give you the name Big Country?
I was 30 years old when I got to the 83.
Okay.
Country name came about from my boy Tank. His name is Darryl. He said, "You talk like you're from the South, but you raised in Brooklyn. Where do you get this country accent from?" I said, "I don't got no country accent." But I always like to tell stories, and he was like, I don't got no time for your country, but he'll say other things, you know. And
That's
then
hilarious.
and he said, anybody seen Country? Because I had a habit, like I'll walk off. I'll be on the scene. I just walk off and start looking around. And he said, anybody seen Country? And they said, no, the name stuck. Then one day, one of the chief, not chief, he was an inspector. He started calling me Country.
That's hilarious.
And he's like, hey, Country, what you think about this? I said, I'm fine, boss. Everything's good. And then, so a supervisor, sergeant, pulled me to the side. She goes, he just disrespect you. I said, I'll let you know when he disrespect me. He didn't. You know, if I, you know, that was the name that was given to me. I accepted it and I embraced it. You know, sometimes people call me the country here. There go Country Black. There's Country. He's over here. You know, but I tried to be a feature in the neighborhood because I wasn't a rapper. I wasn't a basketball player. But I wanted to be able to give something back. And the only way I could give something back was communicating things that they probably didn't know, but to help them be better and feel better when they approach or get stopped by a police officer.
So one thing that we have in common, which is great, all of us here on this panel, we did anti-crime, and we loved anti-crime, and now anti-crime has been disbanded. It was part of the fabric of doing intrusive police work. What was the support system like back then, you felt, or a lack of support system doing anti-crime in comparison to what we see right now? Because intrusive police work and proactive is so important, especially since you came in, you know, under Giuliani, and specifically you met him in person. How did you feel back then? What was the support like, if any, in comparison to what we see right now, doing anti-crime?
Well, the difference was it's just the support. You know, it's like people who never did this type of work are so quick to judge us. Don't understand. They probably never been punched in the face. They probably never, like when everybody's running from shootings or running from fires, we're running into the action and stuff. They don't know what we do on a day-to-day basis. They don't know how we approach people. We don't know. We approach plenty of people who had guns on them, and you know, and sometimes we survive. But there's been sometimes it always takes us that 5 seconds where a blink of an eye, you don't know what may happen and stuff. So I think the support from higher ups is a little different, you know, back then compared to today and stuff. You know, everybody, they're so quick to want to throw somebody on the bus. Or before we used to say we don't Monday quarterback nobody. But I understand it. We do it for a training purpose. We don't want to be that guy or that girl that's in that position. But you want to be able to do your job and be able to have the backing from the higher ups.
What were your aspirations like coming on the job? Did you want to get into leadership, or did you want to go to the detective route? Like, what were you thinking, like stepping in and then getting into anti-crime? Like, what were your aspirations to do on the job?
Well, my aspiration on the job was to keep the job. You know, you got to think about it. I call this thing, I came from a place called insecurity. You know, I did security. You know, whoever did security for a private sector, you didn't get paid. I probably was the only person on the job that actually worked for minimum wage. I tell people, my salary at one point was $3.35 an hour. You know, when I got, I worked in the shelter system for 3 years. You know, that's my first taste of domestic violence. When I went to the aid to help somebody in the shelter system, and they hit me in the head with my own radio. You know, so I already knew firsthand and stuff. And security didn't back you. They didn't, you know, the company that I was working for was no security, was no benefits, was no nothing. So I learned already. So when I had that experience coming into the police department, it made me understand how to handle things, certain situations, how to handle domestic violence, how to handle homelessness and stuff. You know, I learned from the foundation, the background, the upbringing, working insecure jobs.
You know, unfortunately, right now, the manpower in the police department as we speak is so low. It's been diminished. There's a mass exodus. And unfortunately, the burden of police work, it has fallen on the detective squads. I mean, the detectives right now are really, at this point, outstretched, where they're expected to go out and fill spots on patrol. Those guys are going out. They're doing overtime in transit. Their cases are just overloaded. And the burden has put on them, instead of doing intrusive police work, but to do more follow-up investigations. What was it like for you going to the detective squad? What did you learn in the detective squad, and what was it like with a caseload, and what separates a good detective from a bad one?
paying attention to detail. As a detective, you have to pay attention to detail and stuff. You know, strike while the iron's hot. You know, if one of the things when I was in the 73rd squad, you know, I bring a tent. Well, I was trained from other people in the squad and learned from some of the new guys that came on. You got to have that intensity. You got to treat every case like it could be a grand larceny, a petty larceny. Treat it like it's a homicide. Get out there and stuff. Like if a shooting comes over at 1800, I like to be on the scene at 1803, 1805 because then it's fresh. It's like taking food out of the pot. You get that fresh. You know what's out there. You know who to see. You see who's stepping off. Some people may not want to say nothing to you, but they give you that eye contact. You follow the eyes. Sometimes they may say, you look at them and you'll write something on a piece of paper and drop it on the floor, and they'll pick it up and they'll call you later. It's paying attention to detail. You know how to separate people from that element so they don't bring attention to themselves. But like I said, like if you get a case, let's say domestic violence case, you get the case the next day. They got things called body camera. 99% of the time, the ID is made on the body camera. Look at the body camera right away. You get your ID, drop the ID card. Make your attempt to go talk to the victim. You shouldn't talk to the victim 3 or 4 days later unless the victim got their jaw wide shut or is in a coma or something like that. It's something different. But you got to document it so now whoever that unit is that look at your case don't get pulled. And don't be lazy. One thing I can't stand is a lazy person. That irks me.
What was we kind of know your route to the squad, right? You did anti-crime, but how was that? Like what squad did you go to? Did you initially go to a detective squad or did you go to narco? Like what was your path to get that gold shield?
I went to the 73rd Detective Squad out in Brownsville. I got there in 2007. We had some old time bosses there and stuff, when I got there, I don't know, the squad commander name was Eddie Lott. And he'll talk to you and be like, what you feel about this case? What direction you want to go in this case? And you tell him and he'd be like, I got your back. He let you work, And then we had experienced detectives at the time. When I got to the squad, we had detectives that had already maybe 10 years, 15 years already in the squad, and you learn from them. Some maybe, like a little unethical, like you don't understand, like they may yell, shout, whatever, but you learn. It's like the drill instructors. You look at not all the drill instructors you're gonna like. So you take the good and you take a little piece from there and you show from your own opinion, from your own way of doing things, how you do the caseload. As long as you got the basic dozen intact, nobody's not gonna touch you.
Well, there's no doubt about it. NYPD detectives are the best, the greatest in the world. There's no doubt about it. So you're in the squad a long time, right? So right now at this point in retirement, are there any cases that you still think about? Any cases that, if you could walk us through any cases that were really significant that you still think about? It could be anything, but something that really, sat with you, or maybe it was unfinished, or a case that that turned into a great outcome. Is there a case that you could really think of?
There's so many. Unfortunately, I mean, I talk about the ones that was not able to solve at the moment, or just listen to like the parents. Like it was just when I first got into the squad, and I remember going to the scene, and it was this young kid, and he got shot in the head, and he hit the brain matter was by my feet, whatever, and then it was like 30 people out there, but it was this one voice that I heard. It was the mother scream. And she goes, she said, can I go lay next to him? I said, no, ma'am, you can't. I'm sorry. She said, can I just get his hat? I can smell his hat. I was like, I'm sorry, man, I can't. It's a crime scene, but I will be able to talk to you. I'll find out who's the case detective and let them talk to you personally. And then I had to take a step back. And at the time, my son was in the service. So I had to call him up to get my composure back, just to hear his voice. Then I went back to work and everything. But, didn't hear a man scream. I had the case where the guy got, the thing was the mother, they got into an argument, and the mother left a voicemail telling him, don't come back home, kicking you out. And she didn't realize that about that time, 5 o'clock in the morning, he was shot twice in the chest and passed away and stuff. And still working. That case still is on my mind. One recent case was a young lady got shot twice in the head, allegedly by the husband, and we're still working on that case. Even right now, even though I'm retired, I still, whoever's got the case, I still like, let me know if you need me to come in. I'm here. I just testified in a homicide case 2 weeks ago. For a case that I wasn't a case detective, but she made a statement, and I had to come. I had to testify for that. But I'm always available. I wrote my own number at the DA's office. Call me. Here you go, right here. And they had it pinned up against the wall.
James, so you came in right on as Giuliani was in. It was like the height of the broken windows theory of policing. Like the NYPD kind of went into that proactive mindset, height of stop, question, frisk. What were your thoughts on that? On how the police department was to how the police department is, and like what do you think the best version of the New York City Police Department should be? Like what do you think the police department should be doing? Are we headed in the right direction, or are we not on the right direction?
Well, we're never going to be in the right direction unless the higher ups and city council work together. They took us certain things away from us that prevent us from doing our job. The 250s, I remember when I came on, the 250 wasn't just a check box. It was a paragraph. You actually have to write the story out, what was the stop about, or, you got to understand what the stop thing was about. There's information that can help down the line, So then when they made it like an activity that you had to put on your activity sheet, that's what became a problem, because now they made it seem like you just going to do a 250 just to put an activity sheet. If I didn't stop you for a burglary in progress or robbery description, then I'm not stopping you. Now, I'll stop you and say how the Knicks are doing or how the Jets are doing or something like that. But that's not government for me to put it on the sheet. We're just communicating with the neighborhood. But sometimes some of the information does help. I remember I had a case where the guy got shot, and the cops prior to that saw somebody coming running from the scene. They stopped him and everything like that, and took the information down. I said, "Oh," I listened to him. I went over to him and did a photo array, and I got a hit on the shooter. So it does work if it's done properly. You have to, don't take a. You have to be able to pay more attention to details and know when to use it and when not to use it.
So we often talk about body cameras. And the reason why I want to bring it up is that you mentioned body cameras, right? So essentially, right, all of us came up, we started our careers, there were no body cameras at the time, and we eventually had to transition into it. So what was your experience like with body cameras? Tell us the things that you liked about it. What advantages to body cameras, in your opinion, if any? And are there any things about the body cameras you didn't like, as far as for detective work and as far as just for yourself? What are your thoughts on the body camera? Because I often say I believe it's great when it comes to major incidents, but when it comes to minor stuff, sometimes it kind of convolutes it. That's my opinion. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the body camera, at first I didn't understand it. To be honest with you, I didn't know how to turn it on. Actually, it was I was doing transit overtime, and somebody came running down the street and said, "This guy got a weapon." I didn't, I'm looking at him, and if you look at when the other cops' body cameras when they showed up, you could still see me trying to cut the thing on, and I kept hitting it, and but it works to a point where when people say that the cops said this, but we didn't. It works when it shows that because there's always three sides to a story, and I always hope our side is always the right story. So the camera brings that out more or less. But old timers, it took us a hard time to understand it because we thought it was like picking up, because like we like to crack jokes or have fun. We thinking that they might take it the wrong way, sometimes I think you have to have a thicker skin, but the body camera does work if it's used properly, because it protects us. Actually, it does protect us, more you think about it. But then sometimes you got to look in the count of who you're talking to. Like, you don't have it on if you're talking to a rape victim or even somebody who is really afraid to be in, they're in the neighborhood. They got to be out there every day, and they don't want to see their face or whatever, because sometimes things do leak out. So that's the negative on it. I remember one time I was in the 7-3, and I saw this guy. I was talking to him, and I just asked him a question, and he said, he don't pray to keep his job. He said he don't pray that his wife don't leave him or anything. He don't pray to put food on the table. He said the only time he prays is when he's entering and leaving the building. You know, and I was like, wow, how can you keep a person like him and his family safe? That's the only time he prays. And so, you know, when he's entering and leaving the building. And you know, that right there, you know, I'm like, that's what some of these politicians got to see and understand. You know, instead of fighting this, for their own agenda, they should be out there worrying about the people's safety in the neighborhood and the cops' safety. And so there's certain things we need, but when you got people in higher, let's say civilians who never put on the uniform and never know what we face, you know, they never going to understand. Even if you got the body camera, they still going to question it. Why the cops did this, why we did that. But going back to this question with the body camera, I think it works out and it helps us a lot.
James, what would your advice be to like a young guy, a girl coming on the job? What was James Tillman like as a cop or as a detective? You showed up to a scene, someone needed help, or maybe they didn't need help. Maybe they were a perpetrator. What was your mindset? Like, what was your ethos in approaching police work? And like, what kind of advice would you give to young people today?
You got to know your audience. It's like being on stage. You got to know where you're going. You got to know the element you're in and stuff. Treat people with respect. If you're a guest in their backyard, regardless. You know, they could be dead wrong, but you got to know how to handle certain situation. Like, you know, like I tell people, like if it's domestic violence and the guy's acting up and he's in front of his kids, I was like, yo, we're not gonna do this in front of your children. We'll step outside, we'll talk as men, you know. And there's always a multiple choice test, you know. It's your way. It's like Burger King. It's gonna be my way, but I'm gonna let you think it's your way, you know. And see who's gonna come on the end. People show respect. I ran into people later on. They told me, you show respect inside my house, even though I was wrong. You told me I do this in front of my children, because I respect you, you know. And I was just minding my own business. And he said, "Ain't nobody's going to touch you." And in my mind, I was like, I wasn't worried about it, but I appreciate the you know, that the streets had my back as much as I had their back, as much as I had the cops' back. I always treat people fair, you know. And like I said, it's my upbringing. Thanks to my parents. I always call Betty and Calvin. I tell you, and the family base. You know, one of the things I always look at it, you got to have some type of thing. Who's your hero? My hero was my dad. My motivation is my family. So we have to put everything into order and stuff to be successful. And the only way we're going to do that, we have to work together. You know, my siblings, you know, my wife, my son, my grandchildren. You know, I have to tell them things and stuff. I told my grandchildren. My grandchildren asked me, how's court? I explained to them. You don't want to be on that side. You don't want to be on that right side of the room with somebody in the suit next to you with a tie talking for you, you know. So my advice to the young cops and stuff, be open-minded. You're a guest in the backyard. Treat everybody fair. Don't shake, no flake, no none of that stuff, you know, because they're going to respect you.
You know, to me, James, you really exemplify what it means to walk softly and carry a big stick, because I've heard nothing but great things about you. We see in the chat, hardworking man. Obviously, you earned a lot of respect. You talk about your upbringing, how it made you humble, and you can see it right now. I mean, we had a conversation offline, and now you're so humble, and yet you've earned a lot of respect within the police department. So, unfortunately, the police department's at a point right now where most of the job has less than 5 years in the job. They don't have that veteran apparatus to lean towards like yourself when you were there. So what's missing besides that? What do you think is missing in today's generation of policing in comparison to when you were there? Because you're so humble, you earned respect, you did the job, you talk about respecting each other, respecting everyone. What has changed, if any, in today's generation of policing? What do you see? I mean, especially we watch these cameras, and unfortunately cops are getting ridiculed out there. In your opinion, what has changed? Or did you see that also? Did you see cops getting ridiculed when you were there? What are your thoughts on the way we are viewing policing?
Well, let's start with the training. I think from the time I was in the police academy, we used to run around the gym, let's say 98 times or whatever. They used to teach us how to box. They used to not go into much martial arts, but they teach us. I remember when they first taught me how to use the PR-24. That was my weapon of choice. That was my thing. 21 strikes. That was it. Never made it past 2, but that was but that was my thing. Everybody knew me. I was in anti-crime. I was the only anti-crime guy that walked around with the PR-24. That was my equipment. That was the tools that he gave me. Now they give you the tools, but they question you why you use the tools. And so I think sometimes it comes from inexperience. People's looking, you got this young generation, that's being raised by TikTok, YouTube videos of certain things and stuff. And you have activists out there who's preaching the wrong things when it comes to police. It's like we are easy target for you to come after us instead of coming after the people in the neighborhood who's creating the police and stuff. Like, it's like we play in sports, If you're a physical team, I have to be physical with you, I could play finesse, I could do this and that. So it depends on the neighborhood you're in. But like I say, it goes back to the training. I heard that like certain things in the academy, I don't know if they have a timeout card or they don't run as much, they don't box as much, they don't do the exercise as much. So if you look around, like I would say, like if you don't exercise your body and your brain, then you're gonna act a certain way. Then fear sets in because you feel that you can't really protect yourself, but you have to go back to the basic training. I think I read somewhere a professor one time said that you got to take the physicality out of police training. What kind of sense is that? That don't make no sense. But that's come from a person who never been punched in the mouth before. Yeah.
What do you think the biggest problem? Look, I could tell just by speaking to you, you're a very humble guy. But if you were in the position to change anything in the city, what do you think is the biggest problem facing New York City and the New York City Police Department today?
Let us do our job. Let us do our job. And so stop, you only can fit one hand in the cookie jar. Can't fit two hands, so let us do our job, and you'll get the results. And so give us the backing, I remember one time when I was a kid and you see a cop, you didn't make eye contact with the cop. You look, you see him, you walk away, you go this and that. We got to get the respect back, and the only way to get the respect back, city council have to be on the same page as us, Now, I'm not saying that we go out there and bring back the 70s or the 80s and something like that. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is to respect the uniform, I never saw, even when I was a kid, I never saw people get in the cop's face, spit on them, curse them out. When I was growing up, you would never do nothing like that.
Well, unfortunately, we watch videos and where cops have to use force, and the reality is it's ugly. And you even admitted you had a weapon of choice because the reality is you have to defend yourself. You have to go out there with a presence. But these cops are out there right now. They get zero support. We watch numerous use of videos. I'm sure you watch them too. 2 recent detectives fight with a perpetrator, and there's been so much scrutiny because these cops were throwing punches. And with the diaphragm law, it's just made it even more difficult. What are your thoughts on the diaphragm law? All these crazy laws from legislation just really have inhibited cops from doing their job. What were your thoughts? Because you had a transition just like we did. You transitioned into body cameras. You transitioned. They had the diaphragm law. That really changed everything. What are your thoughts on this crazy legislation and the effects it's had on policing?
It has a big effect because some cops are afraid to react, to do things because now they got to answer to what's being in place. And so I've seen videos where I just seen cops standing around while their partner getting stomped in the head or pushed, kicked into the thing. I mean, anybody ever work with me or anybody ever know me, I got your 6. I didn't play them games and stuff. Respect goes, is respect. I mean, even for the military now, my name, I'm proud of my name that my daddy gave me. So I used to tell people would call, hey, that's Mr. Tillman. I had people with their kids and stuff. If you see this cop right here, show respect. It's not the man respect, but we respectful to that person. Respect goes both ways. I respect you. If you start here, I'm not going to start here with you, but don't come to me here. I'm going to bring you back down here. So it's all about, like I said, it's all about respect. And I think everybody should be on the same page. Just like some people, they have things called they put together. They have a conversation about police reform, but you have no police officer on the panel. How you gonna talk about police reform? There's no police officer there. Doesn't make no sense. Make it make sense to me.
Well, I think that's a great point. Is like, 2020 brought in a lot of this police reform, right? And I think like some of the bills they passed, like if you listen to how they sold it, like bail reform, like
Mhm.
if you tell me about bail reform, I'm like, if you tell me we're keeping poor people in jail because they can't pay for minor crimes, right? A guy's sitting in Rikers because he can't pay for bail to get out for maybe a violation of an order of protection. He's really not a threat to anybody, or maybe for child support. I totally understand the nonviolent offender, that who doesn't really have much of a criminal record shouldn't lose his job and sit in jail because he can't pay for bail. But what they did is they didn't bring any of our voices in to like make competent legislation. Like what would your message be to the city council and to the assembly and the senate and the governor and the mayor? We continuously seeing all of this public safety legislation coming down the pipeline, and there's a lot more of it, and we're going to be talking about a lot more of it as the weeks and months go on. We brought it out a lot. Like what do you think is the major disconnect between the laws and actual reality in New York City streets and having a competent police force?
Well, the people that's putting that laws in place, they should spend a day in the 75 precinct, 73 precinct, Brooklyn North, go to the Bronx. Let them go out there and answer radio runs. Let them go out there and respond to somebody, family member who's just been shot or stabbed or not coming home for dinner that night. Let them go out there and see firsthand, not the aftermath. Let them see it and experience firsthand when you're driving in the car to get to the emergency and stuff. Let them see that. And I guarantee they'll change their way of thinking when it comes down to let us police at the neighborhood and talk to the community, what they need. All you gotta do is go and talk to the community and stuff, not the ones who wants to create chaos. Like right now, even down here in Texas, kids cannot go into the mall unless they have an adult with them. But why is that? And so they're out of control, So sometimes we got to put the parents on blast too. Let the parents, like that picture I got behind me of my son when he was 13, 14 years old. I wasn't having that. I introduced him to what I call the left and the right. Let them know how you see yourself 10 years from now. What are you gonna do? Yeah, I'm always gonna be in your corner. I'm always gonna be there for you. And so guess what? 2006, he joined the military. 10 years there, came out, 4 years as a train conductor. Now he's down here as a federal officer with a bachelor's degree. Getting ready to go back to school probably to get his master. My nephew, I love, my nephew. Like I said, I'm all about family. My nephew, his father was shot and killed in '94. You know, you know, I understand your dad's not here, but you have your uncles. You have me. You have your other uncle, my brother Dow. His mom is there. My shout out to my sister Doreen. But we was there for him. Now look at him now. He got beautiful children, a beautiful wife who's a principal, and he's I think he's a assistant principal at the school upstate. So we all could work together on a lot of things and stuff. You got to be there for the kids, but the kids' parents should be responsible instead of putting laws in place to hinder us. Let's start with the parents.
Your humbleness, your humbleness is outstanding. I'm getting reverb too, brother. Maybe it's one of the mics. John, you hear it?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Go.
Yeah, I just went away. Yeah, you had it too. Listen, your humbleness is outstanding. I'm so impressed by it because I believe the more humble that you are, it's like, wow, here's a retired detective that has a lot of experience and so much to offer. And the way you speak about your son is super impressive. And I love that. So we often talk about humanity in policing, right? And do you think that people have lost the humanity in policing and the humanity towards police officers? I often think that police officers are treated like peasants now and expected to be something that's just not realistic. For instance, the other day, it's probably the stupidest post I've ever seen on X. And it was this idiot who put a picture of 3 cops walking on patrol, and 2 of them happened to be eating an ice cream. And it's like, oh, look at these cops. They're eating ice cream. They're not doing their job. And it's like, well, do you get a break at work? Maybe they just, having it. But they were still walking. They're still doing patrol. And I think we lost humanity towards cops. It's just not realistic what they want. Don't get me wrong. There are some stupid YouTube videos where I think cops have went way too far. But what are your thoughts when you see something like that? I saw John put, this is the dumbest post of the day. And I said to myself, would you rather just total chaos that they don't have the time for ice cream? What are your thoughts when you see things like that?
Well, you're allowed to have a break. Sometimes when you're in uniform, the all eyes is on you. I mean, as far as like the way the treatment of the police, I think it starts with these so-called videos that come out. They show the bad side where people get in the cop's face, the cops don't react, or whatever the case may be, and then all of a sudden, that's when they treat us with a lack of respect. But so then you got somebody going around telling them, "Oh, the cops can't do this, the cops can't do that," and they think they can get away with it. But like I said, back in my time growing up, it was a respect factor, and they lost respect for the cops in uniform. But somehow we all got to get together, the activists, everybody, and get together and say, "Hey," the activists is the ones that got to go in and say, "Hey, you got to show respect to to you guys, to the officers in uniform." Because what happens is if you don't, you got kids behind you that's following the same thing. So now you have a new generation of people growing up to disrespect the cops.
What do you think the biggest, like we often talk on here, we talk about how like the internal pressures of the NYPD outweigh the external pressures of the NYPD. In your opinion, like what do you think the department, do you think the department is doing right by officers, or have you seen a shift in the morale in officers and the way that the leadership treats officers and during your time and now?
Well, my time, I thought the leadership was great. You know, it was the same in the military. I can't tell you to dig a foxhole if I never dig one. So the old leadership, you had some of the guys that became chief of department, but didn't take their first sergeant test until they had 14 years on. So what I'm saying is the experience. You got guys. Don't get me wrong. I always tell people, stay in the patrol guide. It's just a guy to help you, even if you don't come a boss. But when you get guys and girls who comes from a certain command as a cop, and they go to a tougher command, and as soon as they hit 5 years, they promoted, but they don't really have the experience as a cop. They don't understand about leadership. Leadership is to lead by example, and if you don't have leaders that you could follow, and so then that's when the miscommunication. That's when things happen, when leaders don't know how to stand up for their guys, or talk to the high ups. This is what's going on. This is what we need. We need this. We need this. Like I said, I remember Bill Parcells said, just give me the ingredients, the groceries, and I'll do the cook. They're not doing that. They're not letting us cook. They're not helping us to be able to protect the neighborhood better without us having the back of the mind. If we do that one, they coming out to get us.
Well, I want to ask you a question, right? Because I think this is the kind of the elephant in the room. So there are people out there that are trying to manufacture racism in the police department, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. For instance, we have an attorney that actually filed a lawsuit saying that the mile-and-a-half run is racist towards black men, which I think is the most ridiculous thing. What's your advice to young black men today that want to become a police officer in the police department? Like, you and I both came up in the military. When I was in the Marines, the only colors we knew was dark green and light green. There was no racism. Same thing. There was so much diversity in the police department. I never saw this racism that they often talk about, this need for diversity. In fact, I think it's an insult to black men, because I worked with black men in the police department that were phenomenal at their job, especially and same thing in the military. What's your advice to young black men that want to join the police department today that are being told that there's this issue with diversity and that there's racism in the police department, which I don't even think exists? What are your thoughts on that? What would you say to a young black man who wants to join the police today?
I saw him raise their right hand. Come on in. The job provides, and it gives you a different avenue and stuff. See, the thing is, if you're not on the inside, you don't know. If you're still on the outside, you'll know what's going on in the inside. So join the police department was the best thing I ever did, because it gave me a understanding of the police department. You know, it gave me understanding how to work in the community and stuff. As far as jogging a mile and a half, you should be able to run a mile and a half. When I was in the military, not just the military, but when I was in the police academy, um, I, so I was 6'1" at the time, 244, and I ran like a deer. You know, shoot, in the academy, I think my final run was 10 minutes and 54 seconds. I didn't believe in quitting, you know, and to say that's a problem too when they brainwash people talking about everything is not about race. It's about character. You know, I don't care what color you are. If I don't like your character, your demeanor, you know, I ain't gonna like me and my ex-partner, we'll call anybody a piece of crap, but you know, in a minute. But my thing is it's about your character. You know, now coming on the job, you wanna hey, I recommend it. I talk to people, I say, oh, come on the job. You know, it's not what the media brings out to be, and so just do your job, study that patrol guide, study the penal law, so you know what you're putting your hands on somebody for. I always tell people, resisting arrest should never be your number one charge. That should not be your first charge. You know, that's what gets you all the time. That's a catchphrase. Resisting. No, what was he doing or she doing? You know, to put the resisting. Resisting if I already know that I'm going to arrest you for a charge or whatever, and then you want to fight me, then resisting going to be my second. But trust me, it's going to be a first charge there. And I always tell them, don't put resisting as your first one. And so, you know, like I said, you don't want to be a boss, but stay in that patrol guide, read it, the best of your ability. And so,
James, there's a lot of social media influencers out there now, and they generate content by agitating police officers. They go up to them with their 50A, you know, they blast them with it, which is for civilians on here, which is their police complaint record, which is not really a true representation of it, because a lot of those, even if they were found unfounded, they're on there, and people will believe that they're substantiated. What do you like? I watch it and I'm like, I don't understand why we need any new legislation, and I don't understand why these people aren't being arrested for harassment and disorderly conduct and possibly resisting arrest should they resist arrest. What do you think the department could do about that, or should do about that? Do we need new legislation, or how would you have handled that if me and you were standing on 42nd Street and here comes this guy getting in our face, sticking the phone, and really won't back off, follow any lawful orders or any of our commands? Should they be arrested, or do we need new legislation for that?
well, if we're gonna put something in place, we should make it where don't violate my arm distance. You know, don't get too close, because I always had this thing. You're not gonna have me having banana soup for 3 months, because you're not gonna get close enough to punch me in my face to wire my jaw. I'm not doing that. So if you get in my face close enough that I feel threatened, it's gonna be a different story. And I'm saying it in a respectful way, because I only react to what you do to me. And so I still got to go home at the end of the day. My partner still got to go home at the end of the day. But it's shame on these people that goes out there and encourage them to do that. You know, so when you encourage violence, you know, this is what happened. You know, this didn't start today. This was already there when you had one person get up there and say, go to the police, get into the police face. Nothing's going to happen to you. But if you tell them, yo, get in the police face, this is what's going to happen to you. If you started it, you know, you ever see that TV show Martin when he got beat up by Tommy Hearns? You know,
Yeah.
so, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, you know, we have to give it a no, like, hey, we're gonna fight back. We're gonna fight back. It's all that matters. We're gonna fight back. It's just that, you know, but these activists is the ones that encourage the violence towards police officers.
So,
You know,
but should we be arresting them? No, on the scene now, currently. Like, I believe we should be, and I
Right.
believe the department should be putting out the laws and the training and empower these officers. And I feel like the reason they're not doing it is because of the job. They're not saying anything about it.
I think they should be arrested. And it will let it be known. Just like when you had the protesters. Look, I understand a good protester here and there, but when you start crossing the line, being violent, spitting, all this stuff like that, you know, hey, you lock them up. Don't give them a desk appearance ticket. Like certain states, you put the orange suit on, they don't stay in county for a week. They'll change their mind about certain things and stuff. I remember I was doing anti-crime, and I think it was back in the days when they had the the RN. It was like they was like Occupy Wall Street. They was talking about certain about police brutality. And these three couples, they get arrested. They get a summons. I think it was at Union Square. They on the L train, and they get robbed. After they got released, they get robbed, and we got it as a pickup. And I caught one of the guys who had the knife, and they saw police action. The same three people goes, "Wow, I didn't know y'all. This is what it's all about. That y'all actually care about the community." They said we'll never protest against the cops again. You know, so these are things they have to see. And like I said, when you got somebody out there, you got the younger generation following suit. I've seen young kids cursing out cops and stuff, 16, 15 years old. When I was growing up, that's a butt whooping, not just by the cops, but that's by your parents too. Once the cops take you back home. And so, like I said, Betty and Calvin wasn't playing that. So my mother punched me in the mouth for sucking my teeth 300 feet away.
Listen, you obviously came from a deity of respect. You talk about respect and humbleness, how they go hand in hand. And I think you learned that. You talked about your upbringing, military, and you brought that to the police department, which is so important. And I love the fact that we're talking about that, because I think that what you said earlier is right. You're doing anti-crime. I did anti-crime. So did John. And in order to do it, you needed a good support system. And that's, I think, in order to have good leadership, you need to have a mission. And I think that's the problem. There's no mission. Whether there's new legislation or not, I don't think these cops are given a mission. Like, here's how you handle these scenarios. Here's how you handle people that are agitating you. Here's how you handle these social media influencers. And there's no mission. These cops are stuck in positions. So where they're afraid to take action. Obviously, they're afraid of complaints. They're afraid of being the next viral video. Did you see cops out there? Because you saw the transition, right, with cell phones to body cameras. Did you work with cops, or did you see yourself, or maybe it happened to you, that started to be apprehensive towards intrusive and proactive police work because they were afraid of complaints, because they were afraid of viral videos? What did you see that? Did you feel that yourself?
Well, my last few years of the job, because I started doing transit. That's why I was back in uniform. So it was a person who I was working with. You know, some of the guys I worked with and the girls, they was a pretty good in most part, but then sometimes you could see maybe they a little tended to moving, or they didn't want to get involved. Me, I had no problem. Like when I did transit, I was on the platform. You know, train pulls in, the conductor saw me. Everybody saw me. I stand there, I look in the train, and I remember time I got on the train and said, "Who's crazy?" Everybody looked and pointed to this guy. I said, "Come on, you got to go. Come with me." You know, I would just go in there. I just entertain people. You know, and I always had my PR-24, which the cops don't carry today. Everybody else saw that. You know, and when they saw that, I was going to my pocket to make sure my wallet, my change or something, and I took out my PR-24 just to position the money in my pocket. Somebody from my left saw me pull out the PR-24. They took off running. I wasn't even by them. They just saw the PR-24. So it was a deterrent. And so I kept that PR-24 with me everywhere I go.
James, you keep talking about the transit overtime? Like, what do you think it was effective? Do you think it's necessary, the transit overtime? Did you do like the summer all out that we're doing, or do you think it's we should be deploying resources differently? Like, what are your thoughts about like putting out all the guys in the squad, specialized units? What were you overall on it? Besides, I know everybody likes it for money, but I'm saying as a deployment strategy, like, what do you think about it?
I think it was a great job to have us do transit all out, and it gave us a because when I'm out there, I talk to the people that's there. I could work in the Bronx, I could be in Manhattan, I could be in certain parts of Brooklyn, and when I did transit, I always picked the worst stations. You know, I had the most time, but I still picked the worst station because I'll go there, and that station won't be worse for my 8 hours there. You know, it was a safety net for people. I had people come up and say, "I'm so glad you're here," and everything. They should do more. And I said, "You know what? Talk to your local congressman. Tell them to keep this in place because that's what we need." So, you know, and sometimes I did transit. I would check areas that I wasn't even like. They say when you do certain things, it's supposed to be inspection. So my thing is, you're supposed to inspect the whole station house. You know, check the exits over here, make sure the gate is working properly. You know, make sure nobody's not hiding there. You know, you got craziness everywhere, you know. So I make sure that when I was working transit, they saw me, you know, and people was looking forward to seeing us there.
I mean, James, you are. I think you are an anomaly, right? Because what we're talking about the strategy in transit, in my opinion, I think there were a lot of cops there that didn't want to be there. They were there to be, in my opinion, statues and potted plants. I think you're an anomaly because no matter where they put you, particularly you, I think you're going to go out there and do your job. That's why you're getting so much love here. People talk about how hardworking you are because you have that character about you. And unfortunately, there are a lot of cops when they're being put in those positions that they're kind of just statues of potted plants. And I'm picking on that, but that's the reality. Not most cops are not like you, and that's why you're so well respected. And you did great in the squad. Could you tell me, because I feel like there's so much about you that we didn't get to hear, and I'm sure you did some real significant, amazing stuff. So, what could you think of anything particularly, or maybe just a series of stuff? What is the most proudest moment of your career? Because I know you've had a lot more illustrious career than you tell us, and you're getting so much respect here. And I've heard great things about you. I haven't heard not a bad word. What's the most proudest moment of your career?
My most proudest moment was July 1st, 1998, when I raised my right hand to come into the police department. I felt that I arrived. I accomplished something, and it was always about making my father proud. My dad, he was my hero. So another proud moment is when I got my gold shield. It was like, wow. I was like, okay, got this gold shield. It means a lot, because it's taken to another level. And then when I got promoted to second grade, that was powerful because it was Chief, I think it was Chief Essex. I think it was Essex. I forgot the chief, but I know he called me up, and I felt like I was a #1 draft pick by the Jets. I just felt like, that I said, he called me up and said, congratulations, you're being promoted to second grade. I said, thank you, coach. Put me in the game. That's what I did, just put me in the game. That was all I kept saying. He said, in all his years of telling people they got promoted, he said, that's the first time somebody said, put me in the game. And that's what I wanted. I just wanted to be put in the game. I just wanted to be mentioned, and second grade was great. It's like a level of success. You wanted to get that next level. I'm fortunate I didn't make first grade and stuff, but I guess due to timing, and you're always gonna have haters. So, but I'm still surviving. I'm still here, and I'm only a phone call away. So they could call me up. I could be a consultant, and I don't care. I'm here.
James, what do you think? Do you think squad guys are recognized for their work, or do you think like as far as the promotional route, we see a lot of people get promoted, and I'm not knocking what anyone does in the police department at all. I just think, I know a lot of squad guys. I see the type of work they do. I see how they work. I see how demanding it is. And I really believe that they should get the lion's share of promotionals when it comes to second and first grade. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think the squad gets enough recognition for their work?
No, they don't. I mean, just before I left, we have I call them horses. I mean, we got guys in the 7-3 squad. Man, them guys are unbelievable. We got they should have been. We got a few guys that should have been promoted 3-4 years ago. I mean, I see the body of work and what they do and stuff. One of my good friends, right now, I hope that he should have been a second grader by now. By the work he put in. If you go right now, you go to the 73 Detective Squad, and I guarantee you there's like at least 4 or 5 guys in there right now that should be promoted. And every time I look at the finest, I don't see their name on it. Just like when I was working, I didn't see my name on it, and I'm like, wow, how this person get there? How that person get it? But it's all about, my dad says, not about who you know. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And maybe they got to change the system around a little bit to get the people in squads like the 7-3 to be recognized. Because there's a lot of work goes into a lot of things. These cases don't get solved by itself. It gets solved by hard work coming from the detectives and coming from the community also. And I've seen detectives put the work in. And you're getting guys, like I said, I'm not knocking ghost units, but I call them ghost units because nobody saw your body of work, but you're still getting promoted.
Your dad was a smart man. He was a humble man. There's no doubt about it. I think the detectives in the NYPD do an amazing job. I mean, I had a great relationship when I was a special ops lieutenant doing anti-crime as a sergeant. I had a great relationship with the squads. It really helped us out a lot. We had a great relationship. But unfortunately, especially right now, I see people get promoted by rocket fuel. And the way you speak about the shield, it's just, I mean, and some people, let's be honest, get that shield and they never had a day of any investigative work. Let's be honest. They drove a chief or did something that they really had no idea. And unfortunately, it waters it down. But when you see that shield, and you said that was one of the happiest days of your career, what does that shield symbolize to you? When you see someone wear a shield, what is that symbolic of? Right? I think about the Marine Corps. If I see someone with a USMC tattoo, I know what that symbolizes. I see someone that says they're retired from the MPD. I know what that symbolizes. What does a shield symbolize to you?
Honor, respect. You know, it to me, it's one of the highest things to receive. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're a 2-star chief or whatever, that's one thing. But you have that gold shield. It's like you're covering everything in a way. I know they got this new unit. Nothing against the new unit they got going on with the DV, but to be better investigators, you got to start out in the brand. You know, you got to start out, as in the area to learn how to do investigation. So if you're doing the 7 major felonies before you even get to the homicides, the grand larcenies on the squad side, you learn how to do things in the brand. You know how to go out there and investigate robberies. Sometimes, like when I was in 73, I was already put in the fire. We was catching robbery shootings. We was working it as a white shield, So we learned investigations, know how to do a cameras, look for cameras, to go look for witness, know how to, how to talk to somebody in the box, and it goes a long way to talking to people and how you express yourself to people. But wearing that shield means a lot, And then when I do see it getting watered down, I was like, if you want to give somebody a shield, I just don't make them a corporal. They not doing investigations, But like I said, I'm not taking nothing away from somebody who got their shield that way. But I will say, if you don't do investigations and you got your shield, how you can get promoted to 2nd or 1st grade before somebody in the squad? I had an issue, nothing against people in community affairs, but I had an issue. They get in 1st grades while I see guys over here handling 2 or 3 homicide cases at the same time. I was one of them too, because we had people that was out, and I remember catching, I think it was me, one of my other guys, and stuff. 2 of my other guys, we was catching 2 homicides in a 3-week period.
James, what I could tell you love the job, and I could tell you're still very passionate about it, and it was an honor for you. What ultimately drove you to wrap it up? Like what you did 27 years. You were in a squad a long time, man. Like you right, since 2007 you've been in the squad?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 2007 to 2026, almost 20 years in the squad. It's a long time. What made you wrap it up? Like, what were the determining factors for you when you were like, you know what, I think my stay here is over?
When my lieutenant called me into the office and said, you made that list of overtime and you can't do no more. I was like, oh wow. I was like, okay, well, and then they started doing the math. And I was like, okay, I work hard to get not just the pension, because I was, it was great. But when you start seeing it dip, and it wasn't, then they had this little scandal going on, and I'm like, I want to stay, but I had to maintain a certain thing, and there was no way for them to do that for me, and for anybody. So and everybody said, you know what, it's time, like my wife would say, you complete the mission. But me, I always feel the mission is always still there. It's still a job for me to do.
I love what you described. A lot of people don't know. So what James was talking about, retired detective here, the BRAM is the burglary, robbery, apprehension module. A lot of people don't know what that is before you work in the detective squad. I think that's great. I think that's like the BRAM should be the farm for the squad. I think that's absolutely spot on. So could you walk us through, because a lot of people, there's a lot of people who watch this show and that are retired cops or active cops, NYPD and other parts of this country. But there's also a lot of people who watch who are not cops and they're police enthusiasts. And they have this idea of what a detective does on TV. Could you walk us through the day in the life of a detective? What does a detective do in the technological modern era What was it like for you? Is it more paperwork than people think? How grueling it is to watch video? Because I always said, man, that's the one thing I give squad guys so much credit to watch these videos and have to pay attention. I mean, in detail. I think it's exhausting. Could you just walk us through, just to give people an idea of what a detective does? I mean, some of the grueling, exhausting work.
Well, it depends on the case. Let's say we're dealing with a homicide case. So now you're talking about the emotion part of it. The emotion never leaves you. The parent or somebody screaming or seeing that person with the brain matter, that age of that kid, that the emotion part never leaves. And now you say, I gotta bring closure to this family, So sitting there watching 4 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours of video, I have no problem doing that because that's going to be my way of trying to find out who did this to this person's family. But you do take it home with you. You go to sleep, you're still dreaming about that person, that victim, or the screams of that family member. And that scream is like unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It makes your skin crawl when you hear a parent scream that way, or anybody and stuff. It was one of my homicide cases. The friend, who I think he probably was the intended target, when he found out his friend was shot and killed over in Van Dyke, he started doing backflips over the deceased body. He started doing backflips. I'm still trying to figure out what that was about, but that was the motion of him, But these are things that I think in every day. What I always tell people, what you see on TV, hey, we could solve a case in 60 minutes, fine, but it doesn't work that way. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and no shortcuts. Like I said, I don't like if you take shortcuts. I don't like it if you're being lazy. I don't like it if a victim's parents call you up. I don't care if the perp is or no, he was a perp, but he's deceased. You don't have your feet on the desk and say I'm busy. No, you don't do that. If I see a detective doing that, I'm not their parents, but I'm their parent that day. I'm gonna let them know. I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind. Like, no, we're not doing that. You're gonna talk to this victim parents and stuff regardless, because the parents think we the last person that saw their child alive. So you got to give them that respect.
Yeah, man. That's look, I like we're all three hardworking guys. We come from very similar backgrounds, and I think our fathers really were pivotal figures in our life. But we see a lot of fatherless homes today, right? A lot of fatherless children going towards gang life, going towards crime. Is there anything that you think that New York City could do to reach out to these kids that are missing that masculine figure in their life, to really keep them in check and keep them in line, teach them what a man should be, how we should act in society?
Well, just go up to at one time they used to have community, not community, they had like CPOP, like guys that work certain areas. When I was on patrol, I used to tell the young kids, come by the precinct. I'm not good in math, but I could pick up a math book and we could do the math together. Let's sit down and do the subject verb agreement. So my thing is, come to the local precinct, and we right now I think the 73 has a little room for the community to come in. So if you have a kid that wants to get out of the gang life or having trouble with certain curriculums in school, just come by the precinct. It's going to be somebody there that's going to sit down with you and help you with your problem.
So you were in the 73rd Precinct, I mean, pretty 20 years, right? You spent a long time there, right? So what was I'm assuming you must have had a big relationship with the community. What was your relationship with the community there? And did you have, since you were there so long, did it uniquely position you in a position that you got concerns from the community and also frustrations from the police officers? What role did you play there? I assume that you played a pivotal role being there so long.
Well, I mean, it was respect. I could walk around Pickens Avenue. I could walk on Sutter. I could, and people they'll come up and say, "Hey, country, how you doing? How's the family?" I said, "How's your family? You good?" He said, "I appreciate that advice you gave me." There was one guy, I was doing transit, at Livonia, and he came to me. He said, "Look, I'm going on the job interview, and I don't have no money to get on the train." And so, the thing is, I've been there. I know that feeling. So I said, "This is on me. Go ahead." Don't you know that same guy came back and said, "I got the job." He went right to the machine and bought him a monthly Metro card. And so, and he said, "Thank you. I got the job." I said, "Well, if you're on time, that means you're late." That was my motto. And so, so what time your job interview? Don't be there on time. You be there. If you're on time, you're late. So your interview is at 12 o'clock. Don't get there at 12. You get your interview at 11:30, 11:15. You know, and that's why I always tell these young kids. And so, you gotta don't be ashamed to be great. You know, if your boys or whatever saying stay with me, then what's gonna happen? You're gonna still be there, and your life don't progress to a certain point. Why you want to be in the fishbowl? Why you want to stay trapped and stuff? Let your third eye, explore. Your third eye is your mind. You know, so just let it grow. Don't be sheltered. Don't be incarcerated for your mind to open up. Your mind should be already open way before that. I call it revolutionary suicide. Don't wait till you. Oh, let me go pick up a book now because I'm doing 30 to life. Nah. What kind of progress you gonna do there?
I love it. Don't be ashamed to be great. Are you a religious man, James? Do you believe in God? And if so, has that brought you through your career at all?
Oh yes, I definitely believe in. We call it say Jehovah. I definitely believe. You know, you got to have some type of blessing. Because I dodge a lot of things. And I'm so far by the blessing, I'm still here. Like I made my thing. You got to have God in your life. And in the teaching, you got to have Jesus Christ. I don't forget that time I was in boot camp, and it came. Somebody was, they was passing around like a little Bible testament talking about you give your soul to Jesus Christ. And I said, well, if they get me through boot camp, I'll get baptized. This was back in '87. So I go and I leave the military. I get out. I graduated. First thing I did, I went to Antioch Baptist Church on Green Avenue, and I didn't know they had a swimming pool in there. I'm walking in there, the water kept getting deeper. So I see the pastor there, and he told, he said he said a prayer and he dipped me. I told him to dip me 3 times. He goes, why 3 times? I said, I don't know. He said, I heard in Jehovah's eyes, 1 day is 1,000 years. And I said, I need 3,000 years of his blessing. So he dipped me 3 times. So you have to have a belief. You got to have it in your heart. Because like I said.
Well, I agree. Listen, I always say, John and I talk about this. I don't consider myself a religious man, but definitely more spiritual. I believe in connection and meaning and purpose. But I think you have to believe in something. I do think that it does definitely help. And I think there's definitely character and values behind that. It's interesting, right? We talked about your pivotal role in the community and you helping out the community. We talked about John. I know he was asking about kids in gangs and things like that. You work in the squad. You've been there you were there for so long. We often see crazy legislation. We see crazy proposals, and what we see in the city council is this push from some of the council members. There is anti-gang database. Now, I used to use the gang database often. It was a great monitoring tool. I thought it was fantastic. What are your thoughts on that? How important was it to you to use the gang database in your investigations? And what are your thoughts about the city council trying to push towards removing the gang database because it's disproportionate towards black men? How much of a tool was it towards you? Because for me, it was fantastic doing special operations.
Well, I don't know. Maybe some of the city council, I think maybe they defense attorneys or something. But I think that the data, hey, listen, if you're not there, if you're not doing something you ain't supposed to be doing, your name won't be in there. Let's put it that way and stuff. Unfortunate, maybe it's people that maybe that looks like me that's probably in that database. But I think if you go throughout the city, you could put, if you're doing some type of criminal activity, you're no different what your color is, you'll be put in there and stuff because we are a creature of habit. So you could probably do 100 robberies, you get caught for that one. And I think it's good sometimes to have a little track base for certain things, You know, now don't get me wrong. You could be a gangbang and you can change your life around. That's fine. You know, and we all for that. And so if you're in the gang database, you want to come to the police department. Hey, I'm changing my life around. Can you get me out of this database? Sure, let's work on that. Instead of like putting a policy in and not to put nobody in the database, let's put it in where if they in that we can get them out. They change their life around.
James, like as cops, and I think internally we know like how petty the job is sometimes. I know the job was petty with you towards the end of your career.
Oh, yeah.
Would you mind going into that a little bit?
Oh man, I think I'm probably the first police officer in the history of the department that got a CD for feeding a prisoner. Pretty much the story was
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I keep it as a motivation. It's right there.
Wow.
You
got to read that to us. I got to hear that. Wow.
Oh, the other paper fell on the floor, but you have a copy of it?
I got it. I got it. I could read it, but why don't you just tell us about it? Just tell us what it is.
All right. So that day, I was at court. I was working on a homicide case. I'm at court. I come back to the precinct, and I'm a Mason. I'm a proud Mason. I'm a Freemason, Prince Hall, and everything. So one of the young brothers who I brought into the fraternity, he called me up. He said, "My nephew got arrested." I said, "No problem. Let me find out who the AO is and everything." So I found out who the AO was, and there was 3 supervisors in the room: a lieutenant and 2 sergeants and his team. So I asked him. I said, "Is it all right for him to make a phone call? Is it all right to get him something to eat? Is it all right for him to speak to his uncle?" The 3 supervisors. He looked at the supervisors. The supervisor said, "Okay," and everything. I said, "Write the uncle's first and last name and the telephone number on your online." So I go downstairs. I didn't even know who the perk was. He just told me it was his nephew, But in the masonry, it's like, length of your cable toe without causing personal injuries to yourself and your family. So it was the length of my cable toe. I went down there, saw his nephew, didn't ask his nephew anything. I said, "Your uncle wants to talk to you." Matter of fact, I'm gonna back up. The AO said that he wants a lawyer. He said it at the scene, so it was nothing to talk about. So I went there and I got on the phone with his uncle. It's like a maybe less than 3-minute conversation. He comes. I asked him what he wants to eat. He said he wanted a beef patty. And me being a comedian, I said, "You want cheese with that?" He goes, "Yes." So his mother was outside. His mother was a correction officer and everything. So I walked past the desk. I told the desk, "I'm going to get him something to eat." Like I normally do. My whole career, I feed the prisoner. It didn't even have to be my prisoner. I'll feed him. So I go across the street, get the beef patty, cheese. The mother was outside, a brother upstairs, and next thing I know, chaos took place. Somebody from my squad said that went and told them guys and said, "Oh, Tillman, he tainted the case. This is an IMB investigation." Instead of coming talking to me as a man, next thing I know, I got a complaint against the IMB. The original charge was affiliated or associated with criminals. Now, my motto was, I didn't join the military to go to jail. I ain't joined the police department to go to jail or anything like that. Like I said, I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant. If anybody anything know about the crack epidemic back in 82, 83, they was doing that right in front of my building. And I wasn't part of none of that stuff. So if I didn't do it in 83, being associated, I ain't doing it in 2024 at the time of this incident. So then next thing I know, I'm getting discharged. I had to go down to IEB. I didn't know they had IEB inside the 114 precinct. And so I was looking at the investigator, and I don't know, he just, for some reason, he wanted to get me for something. And I'm looking at him, and I knew I had more time than he had on this earth, than he had in the position. I knew he had 5 years on because he's a sergeant. But so he goes there, he's investigating the investigator, that I did for a living. So I'm listening to him and everything, and he showed me. I said, "Look, I don't know the nephew. I know the uncle." And that was it. And next thing I know, I got this CD. They wanted to take 21 days, and when they went down to 5, they went down to 3. So they charged me with general arrest process, unauthorized use of a mill, unauthorized use of a cell phone, and unauthorized, I think, personnel, which I brought the mother upstairs, which we bring family members, girlfriends, boyfriends upstairs all the time.
Why they say you tainted the case though? Like, why were they mad about that? What they were saying, like, oh, he would have talked if you didn't give him the food. Is that what they were trying to say?
I don't know what they, because he asked the AO, he was on body cam. The AO, he asked for he asked for a lawyer at the scene. You know, the lieutenant, the supervisor of that was there that put things in motion. You know, I'm not a violent person and nothing like that. You know, but and I pray for that guy. You know, it's just that I move on from him. You know, I mean, he's not on the level and everything, and he, you know, things is happening to him right now, but that's on him. You know.
You know, you're a good man, brother, because to say you pray for him and not be emotionally attached to it, that says a lot about you. I mean, listen, I'm super impressed by your character. There's no doubt about it. You're a great man. What makes me sad to this point is people like you, and there's a lot of retired detectives in the chat, like Mike Smith, another great detective, John, myself, Paul, and many others that have left the job. And what's sad, even you had 27 years on the job, right? A guy like you, we lost such value to the job, and that's what we often talk about. And I feel sad for the guys that are there right now. They don't have people like you anymore, mentors, people that they can lean towards. Is besides the overtime, because you know, even though you had 27 years on, I'm sure at some point you want to retire. You deserve it, but is there anything else that could have kept you in the police department maybe a little bit longer? Because man, we lost such value, and it's a shame to see people like yourself go with such great character, who walk big shoes and really care about people. That's what policing's about. So is there anything else that would have kept you in the police department besides the overtime, or you just knew it was your time? It was your time to retire?
I don't think it was my time to retire. I still think I had enough left. Actually, I would think I wanted to do 30. You know, I wanted to do 31, 32 and stuff. I think if things didn't change, I mean, hey, I don't have to do 100 hours a month. I love the job. You know, if anybody that knows me knew that, you know, I'll be there on my own time. You know, still working the case. Even that day when when IAB called me in for the investigation, they said, "Well, you was there you signed in at 7 or 8 in the morning, but you didn't leave until 8 at night. But you didn't put no overtime in." I said, "Well, I didn't have to put overtime in because that's my discretion. I was going to put the overtime in, and at that time, I was still working on my own cases, and I felt I didn't need to put the overtime in. It wasn't like you know, and that's on me. That's not on you. There's not money coming out your pocket. That's money coming out of my pocket. But if you look at the books and everything, if you tally up from 2007 to the day I walk out that door, I gave the city more time on the books than I ever put in. You know, and people can vouch for that. You know, even right now, I'm retired. First place I go right to the precinct. I answer phones. I still work the fishbowl. I call the fishbowl the reception area. Because everybody look, you ever go to the fishbowl, you ever go to the reception area, they all like fish, you know, they be sucking their lips in and stuff, like I call it the fishbowl. So I sit there and I help them. And I like, yo, you go do this, you do this. I get on the phone and I still answer the phone. You know, one of the DAs asked me, "Can you come down and do a DA swap?" I said, "I don't care." You know, I was retired. I'll go down there. I don't care. If legally, can I do it? And they said, "Nah," but I would have did it.
So you get 3 days for feeding a prison of food that you got, and
Yes.
that was ultimately a punishment. But they charged you with criminal association and all this stuff. Do you think like the pettiness of the job sometimes forces people out? Like look at my scenario. I zero discipline, always 5.0 rated, lieutenant, working my way up through the ranks, and I get forced out because I wouldn't put a vaccine in my body that I had antibodies for, that the department surgeon told me not to take, because it would be detrimental to my health. Like, what were your thoughts about the vaccine mandate and all the cops we lost at that point in time?
Well, I'm fortunate that happened and stuff. We lost a lot of good cops with that. It should be something where they could bring them back to fulfill their career and everything like that. I mean, it was a health thing. My thing is, I took the shot. But I looked at it, I said, man, it was just a personal thing. I didn't come this far to leave, because you got to think of my journey is different from everybody else's journey to get on this job. It took me 3 years after I took the test to get on the job. And if it wasn't for the mayor, Giuliani, and stuff, I probably would not be on this job. So I took the shot, and I think, we all have some issues after that, whatever. But I think they should put it in policy, whoever was forced off the job should get back pay and be brought back on the job.
Yeah. And what was your relationship on the job with the unions? Did you ever get involved with the unions with so much experience as a detective? Did you have any involvement with the unions at all? What are your thoughts on the unions during your time as a detective?
Well, I mean, shoot, I had great relations with the union guys. I never was in a position to be a delegate or anything like that. Politics is everywhere. So I mean, whoever was representing the guys in 73, I supported them. I watched guys rise up in the ranks. I mean, Joe Tallerine. I mean, people. I could call him up right now and he'll talk to me about certain things and stuff. But the union, I think, is the backbone for us, the supporters. Hopefully, we could get a little bit, stronger, where the city council people don't come in and start telling us how for us to be an investigator.
What'd you think about discovery reform when that came in? How did that affect? How'd that affect like your cases, like your investigation time and all that? Did that have a large effect on you, or were you guys able to work through it?
You got to learn to adapt and overcome. Unfortunately, that was put in, but it forced the DA with a time limit, and we know certain things is not going to be available. Because one time when I first came to the squad, we'll have everything that we'll type later. Now you type all your files right at that moment and stuff. And then, but to me, like I say, it seemed like he tried to give the defense team a way out. If you don't have they don't have the documents in 15 days, or whatever they're looking for in 15 days and stuff. I think it put the pressure on the DA and on the detectives and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It did put a lot of pressure on the detectives, especially since you're pushed to get things in a certain amount of time. What was your experience like? I mean, you had so much experience in the squad. When Pulaski changed the step process for detectives, and also a lot I saw too. I saw the difficulty the detectives had to go through when the neighborhood coordination officer program was implemented, and they started having the neighborhood coordination officers share cases with detectives. How did you adapt to that? Did you think that was a good thing, having these other units involved in the cases, like companion cases, things like that? Or did you think that it was inhibiting the detectives from doing their job?
Well, it's always good not to have too many cooks in the kitchen. But if you see something in my case, come to me first, before you go to your boss. And so I feel there's a respect factor. I feel that we earn that. That's why we're in the squad. So if you're gonna look into a case and say, "Oh, you're missing something," let me know. And then who's looking at it? Like if my tax number is 921 and you're a 969 looking at my cases, I'm gonna have a problem with that. Let your tax number be high, higher than mine. If you want to look at my case, don't let it be, 971 or something like that. Nah, what gives you the right to be there to look at my case? It's a different thing. And so, not saying that I can't learn that from you, but I don't think you earn to look at it from that point of view.
And James, what do you think? Wow, hold on, I'm getting a little feedback. Hold on, sorry. What do you think about criminal association? Right, we talked about it offline a little, right? Like you grew up in New York City. Everyone it has some type of criminal history. Do you think it's used properly in the department, and or is it just a catch-all to get people? And like, how should they deal? What truly, in your opinion, is something that crosses the line as criminal association that cops shouldn't engage in, as opposed to you just knowing people in the neighborhood?
Knowing somebody in the neighborhood, I can't change where I grew up, who my parents was, where I live. I think that's what made me today. Criminal soldier, I think it's a catchphrase for people who think they live innocent, that they didn't know nobody. And so sometimes knowing somebody, knowing their character and knowing what they're all about helps you become a better detective, make you a better officer. And so the streets, I still remember this one guy, because at the time it was this thing called the 5%. So his name was Ayala, and I seen him outside. He wasn't going to school, but even though the school was right across the street, and it was 324. I said, you know what? I was seeking out fit in with these guys, so I figured I showed my report card, and that report card was a bad report card, and it was saying 65s or something like that, and he looked at me. This is a guy the same age as me. Looked at me and said, "JC, make this be the last time I see this report card looking like this. You better than everybody. Yeah, you're going to be the one making it out the neighborhood, you know." And he said, "If you come and show me another report card at 65, you're gonna have to deal with me." I was like, "Wow, no, that wasn't my dad. That was a peer." So that was like another fact. I said, "You know what? Next time I saw him, I had 90s, but I didn't, but he was a street guy. He turned his life around and stuff. He always asked, could he come up and speak to the youth and on the neighborhood and stuff. And I said, hey, whenever you're ready, I'm here for you. We can make it happen. He was going to talk about his time and stuff. So you could learn, you know. And I'm not doing the crime with him. We are learning from each other. He's learning. I'm learning from his street affiliation to understand what the street is about and what what to avoid, not to do this. And he put me in my place. And I was probably like in the 8th grade or something like that.
What was, being a detective for almost 20 years in the squad, was there an arrest that you can remember, or maybe several, hopefully one in particular, where you said, damn, you know what? That's why I became a detective. Like everything just came perfectly together, and maybe something that you remember or family members you still talk to from a case. Is there a specific arrest like, you know what? This is why I became a detective?
One case came out was it was my turnover. I was already on the arrest, and the job came over at 8:35 in the morning, and it was 2 people shot, and I responded to the scene, and me at the time, he was a sergeant Willibus, and the guy we used to call Pac-Man. So we on the scene, and so I'm talking about these cameras here and over there, and this sector pulls up on me. Sector shows up. He said, I got a guy in the car who said he was menaced with a firearm 20 minutes ago. I said, all right. I got the description. I said, take him back to the precinct. Who would have known that the description he gave me was actually my shooter who committed the homicide 20 minutes later. So it was 2 security guards. And I remember them, Aaron Locklear, father of 6. James Bissett, he had a father, he had a daughter. James Bissett was paralyzed from the neck down. Aaron Locklear, he passed away 4 days later. And so working the case, so we go into my team and I would go into the corner store, get a video. Another one of my guys that was working ran the 61s. And right in the area where the worker got menaced, the first guy got menaced with a firearm, there was a home invasion dealing with a firearm. And on the 61, they had a name on it, just one name. So we went, spoke to that person from the home invasion, got the full name, did a photo array, or 6-pack, did a photo array, and we got the ID from the menacing part, because he actually squeezed the trigger, but it jammed. And then we got the ID, for the video from him being inside the store. So make a long story short, we got him for a home invasion, got him for attempted murder, 2 counts on attempted murder and the murder. So he's not eligible for parole until 2067.
Good story.
That case stands out. Another case was, it started out as a missing. The parents, underparents, the sister was trying to make a missing report. She was a 26-year-old young lady. I forgot what country she was from, but she came here. She was working at one of the department stores. She goes missing. So I asked them for the description, for my notes. So they told me she had a tattoo here, this and that, and she always take Uber, like a taxi. So I spoke to the taxi driver, and I told her, taxi driver gave me this, talk to me. He said, yeah, that day the landlord came with a suitcase, but the landlord normally don't call him, but he said she called me, and I took and I said, "Well, you took her?" "Oh, I took her out to Long Island, Nassau and Long Island." So that's fast forward. It was on the news that they found body parts. The head was in Nassau, the leg was in Nassau, and the head was found in Suffolk. So I called Suffolk County up and asked them any distinguished marks of, on the body parts, and they told me, and I said, "Do it says this," and this is on the missing case, and come to find out that my missing was their homicide victim. So the information that I gave to Suffolk County, they came to Brownsville and they made their arrest, and I think the landlord, is doing like 25 years.
Wow, that's a good story. That's, if anybody wants to know why the NYPD is great detectives, it's things like that. So shout out to you, brother. Really, it's a sad story, but nice, great police work. I love it. Love hearing stuff like that.
I think.
James, there's a bill coming up that Latrice Walker's working on, and it's called, it's called the Second Look Act. And what it does is it would create a pathway for resentencing to those who served at least 10 years and demonstrated true change. Now, I don't know what demonstrated true change is, but like you just told the story, the guy's not eligible for parole to 2067, and we see cases like that in really egregious, horrific crimes. So this bill, the Second Look Act, it's not going to look at the crime. It's going to look how you fared in the prison system. What are your thoughts around the Second Act bill?
Well, I don't think she ever had any family members that became victims that she had to go to their funeral service. If she did, she probably wouldn't have that thought pattern. And so talk to the loved ones that lost people over the years. Now you got to think about it. I got into the squad in 2007. And at one point, if when you go into the squad room, they have non-fatal shootings. They have homicide victims for that year. So you think about it, from 2007, let's say up until 2017, even past that, there was an average of almost 25, maybe 28 homicides in 100 non-fatal shootings, which means they didn't die, but they got shot, So, but my thing is, if she ever had a family member that was on that war, would she be able to still want to push this bill? That's the question. That's a question that should be thrown out to some. This goes back to these politicians and stuff. They react to certain things because they want to keep their seat or they want to stay here. But it was just the true facts and stuff. I'm big on facts, not opinion. What that bill is her opinion. It's not facts. I'm not saying nobody can't change their life around and stuff. But you got to owe it to the family. Sit down, talk to the family. Talk about the one of the father of two, Henderson, who got shot in the eye and leave his two kids behind. Talk about A-Rod, who was going to the store, happened to be walking with the wrong guy, but he was going to the store to get cookies. Another game, he played basketball, 17 years old, shot twice in the chest, right in front of 260 Stone. Talk to that family. You in that area. She's part of Brownsville, but I was there. I was on the scene, but I never saw none of them guys there.
Yeah, it's so great to hear that, with all that experience in the squad, all those years, you still, sounds like you treated every person, and on all those numbers, they were important to you. You valued life. It's not just, unfortunately, sometimes we hear this percentage compared to that percentage, but you value life, and that's what's so important. People don't understand. And what's amazing to me is everyone deserves a second look, just not cops, right? Like, for instance, I'd be coined as the most complaint cop, and I'll be coined as that forever. And so cops don't deserve a second look, but yet perpetrators do. It's just the same thing. What was your thoughts on the Civilian Complaint Review Board in your career, and what did you see? Did you see it damage anyone's career? And what was your thoughts on the pressures that cops had to deal with, especially doing intrusive police work, especially in anti-crime when it came to Civilian Complaint Review Board?
Well, when I was teaching some of the guys that came into the crime, I said, "Yo, don't be afraid to tell the people your name. Don't hide your shield number. You know, what I used to do sometimes was when I was in crime, I used to look at the wall. I go up to the squad, and what I used to do, I used to print out 61s of the area that I'm patrolling, and I have 61s in the car. And if I stop somebody, I said, "This is why I'm here." You know, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am, but I'm gonna introduce myself. You know, my name is Officer Tillman, A3 Precinct. I said my name that my daddy gave me is James Calvin Tillman. I gave my whole government, you know. So and then I said, well, everybody calls me Country. They're like, oh, you locked my man up last week, man. Man, you good. Yeah, and they just started lifting up their shirt and everything like that. It was a respect factor. And they used to say, yo, Country, I'm gonna make you earn it. You know what I'm saying? You know, if I'm dirty, I'm gonna make you earn it. I said, I understand. I understand the game. All right, let me lace up my sneakers. All right, let's get the run going. You know, it was all good. And so I love crime. One of my best times, on the job was in crime and stuff because come in, we'll work out, you know, then we go out and we knew the area, we knew where I remember one time was me and one of the sergeants just driving, and I look for things like little small things. Like one of the jobs was the guy took the stop sign. Okay, no big deal. I see him. Took the stop. That's one violation. He's on the phone. Another violation. Pull the car over. At that time, you could smell weed coming from the car. You know, so it was three people in the car, and it was the driver, passenger, and one in the back. Took the driver out, talked to him, and then when the passenger came, he didn't have natural movement, walking towards me. So as he's coming towards me, I get close and personal, and I was like, oh, I went, and soon I said, I just throwing things out there. You got something gonna hurt me, and his jaw just dropped. I was like, so either you hurt me with your bad breath, or you hurt me because you have a weapon, and so like that. So, and he came up from Virginia, he had a gun on him, but it's paying attention to details and stuff. Man, we had a couple of things where we get guns and stuff, and it was a fun time, but it was a enjoyable time, but it was also a teaching mechanism for these young guys. We caught you before you actually did something with this gun.
James, there's a lot of people on here who aren't cops that are listening right now. Could you explain to them? Sorry, I keep getting feedback from you. Could you just explain to them what that respect factor was? You said as you rolled around the neighborhood, people would lift their shirt up. Could you explain why they would lift their shirt up?
It's the gun guy,
Right. Wait, I'm sorry. I muted you for a second because I was getting mute back. Could you start over?
Oh, they knew I was the gun guy, and they knew that all I want was I'm looking for the guns that, so they don't turn into potential shooting or homicide. So out of respect, because they know I'm going to respect them regardless. There's a Country, we clean, and they just started lifting up their shirt without me even saying anything. They just lift up their shirt. I had an inspector one time say, Country, y'all guys didn't bring a gun in this month. I looked at the inspector. I said, well, how many homicides or shooting you had on our watch? He said, okay, you can leave my office. You got me. And that was it. Because on our watch, we didn't have shootings. We didn't have homicides but then the guys out in the street knew our schedule. So then we'll, change our schedule a little bit to throw them off guard and stuff. And we know in Bushwick and Brownsville, it's night and day. We don't, Bushwick had a lot more homes. Brownsville had a lot more projects. The plaza at the time, you couldn't go there by yourself, but I could.
I'm curious. You have you walk softly, you carry a big stick, you're humble. You sound like a fantastic leader, a great mentor. You love the job, and it's really impressive. How highly you speak about it, because it does have its flaws too. It was a great job, and the eternal pressures can be tough sometimes. But did you ever think about becoming a sergeant? I know you loved being a detective. It was great. Did you ever think about becoming a sergeant though? Because I think you could. You would have been a hell of a leader, especially with your military experience, your humbleness, your background, your upbringing with your father. Did you ever take the test or think about becoming a sergeant? Was that at all ever I know you love being a detective, but did you ever think about taking that route?
I did. It was right after I think 9/11. I think 2002. And I died 400 names away. You know, so they killed the list and never thought much about it after that. And I said, you know what? Maybe it was a blessing in disguise. I said, you know, I took that test with 3 years on, and I wasn't experienced, and I didn't want to be a inexperienced sergeant. You know, like I said, everybody's stories, everybody's journey is different. I didn't want to have 5 years on and to be a boss and still don't do the job. You know, now if I took the test again with 14, 16 years on, yes, you know, but by that time I was already starting to settle in the squad thing. You know, my thing with the squad was when I got there in 2007, my mother was dying of breast cancer, and but my dedication, you know, to the job, and so I would see her, but then I wouldn't see her, and so that's some of one of the regrets. And so I put the job first. You know, I put the job first on a lot of things, and so.
Wow, it's pretty humbling to say that. Why do you think you put the job before? Do you have regrets with that at all? Why do you think you put the job first before family? Did you feel that the job was family to you? Or did
Yeah.
we lost that?
Well, yeah, the job was family, but it was my military career was cut short, and I think I was trying to make up for the lost time in the military with the department, and so you know, it's like every time you go somewhere, you always got to prove yourself. You know, oh, do you belong here? Why are you here? And so you know, so you always wanted to prove yourself. When I got to the squad in 2007, you know, I had a sergeant there that didn't want me there. You know, and he tried everything to make my life miserable. This was during the time I was going through the crisis with my mom. Then my mother finally passed away, and then and he just kept just riding my back and stuff. I mean, hey, I never tell you I'm going to be a English scholar. Never say I'm going to write a book about war, peace, anything like that. But I do know a little bit about subject verb agreements. And if I don't send it in for approval, that means it's not ready. You know, this sergeant took it upon himself, and so I thought I was back in third grade. I mean, he's up there circling this and circling that. I was like, all right, I got it. I'm gonna take care of it. So we had some words and everything like that. And but I appreciated him because he made me go back to the lab. When I say go back to the lab, I went to Barnes and Noble and started getting me books on this, how to write this paragraph, like this and that. You know, it kept me that I still had to prove something to prove. And then and I, you know, family time. Before I knew it, my son, he's already a grown man. Now he got a family of his own. Got 3 kids. You know, like that. It was like this old song about the men and the, you know, when you're coming home, I don't know when, but we'll be together again. And so it was like, you know, it was like one of them. It was like the roles reversed. My son wanted to spend time with me, but I was always working. Now I'm not working. I want to spend time with him, but he's working. So,
Yeah.
you know, but it's a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of experience. I mean, I probably when my dad died in front of me, when I was working at the 8-3, 8-1 and 8-3 is on the same radio division at the time, and responded unconscious male, 875 Gates Avenue, boom, responded over there. The cop said, "Oh, it's not an 85," you know. I said, "No, that's my dad." So I watched my dad die right in front of me, a heart attack right in the kitchen, and I was in uniform and stuff. So this job built character and strength. So I experienced and saw a lot of things and stuff, and like I told any of the rookies that's coming on the job, uh, know your environment, know your area. One of the rookie mistakes I made, but I'm still here, was I'm on the foot post on Star and Trotman in A3. Job comes over, burglary, but it wasn't a burglary. It was a burglary, but the owner of the building couldn't say what was taken from the apartment because he only owns the building, but he don't know he owns the apartment. I mean, he don't know the contents was inside the apartment. So make a long story short, prior to me going to the building, I always listened to my environment. When I came out the building, I heard a commotion. So the guy said, you know what I got, don't do it again. So as I'm looking, he's in Maria Hernandez Park and he's pointing what appeared to be a handgun with a laser on it, pointing at 3 individuals. So I turned my radio down, went over to the radio. I'm a rookie, fresh out of the academy. And but he said, I know you know what I got, don't do it again. He lowered his arm. I'm behind the van. My thinking is, oh, he ain't doing nothing. I leave the van and I go up on him, but he turned around so fast, he pointed the gun at me. And when he was talking about life-changing experience, all I remember was me reaching my hand out, and that was like for my dad or my mom. I remember my first kiss, and I remember holding my son. Then the anger set over me, but I didn't see him. But I realized I was up on him already, and that was an experience. So I always tell the new rookies, if you got cover, stay behind it. By the blessing, we talked about Christ before. That was a blessing. Well, I would not be here having this conversation with y'all.
James, what do you think about the protests today? We see, like, you know, we've always dealt with protests. I think the history of New York City is, you know, we're the world stage. Whatever happened across the world, you know, they're protesting in Manhattan about it, whatever it is, whether we're involved or we're not involved. We've seen our protest response be very competent in the late 90s through like all the way up to like the almost recent history. And now we're starting to back off. You know, the mayor of New York City says he wants to decouple our counterterrorism resources from our protest response. When you look at these protest situations where they turn illegal and they're taking over streets and roadways, blocking emergency room entrance, you don't see cops with hats and bats anymore, helmets and batons. You were a big believer in the PR-24, which is a form of the baton, early form with the handle off of the end. What are your thoughts when you see these protests? Are we policing them properly, or should we go back to what we were doing prior?
Well, my personal opinion, no, it should be facts. We should go back to where we were. So we're gonna have some type of law and order. Without law and order, it's gonna be chaos, anarchy. Right now, it's like they taking over, and what about the people who's working there, or people who's trying to go to work, or people who's trying to pick up their kids, whatever, you block in the street? It should be a certain level of, you know what, get your point across, but without really causing major issues to people that don't have nothing to do with the protest. I also believe, like, when my dad used to get that belt or that extension cord, you know not to do it again. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna go that way no more. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm not saying go out there and start doing this, but they have to understand that we're still the police. Our title says law enforcement. We're enforcing the law. So if you're impeding people's way, and you creating a riot or whatever you're doing, it should have a special place. You know what? We're not giving you a desk appearance ticket. You go in the county. You know, I call it county. You should put the orange suit on and let them go somewhere and let them think about it for a week. They won't be back out there protesting.
You know, James, I am super impressed by your humbleness. It's been a pleasure. I mean, you said early on, how long is the conversation going to be? We're going on almost 2 hours because it's just a great conversation. You're super humble. You got you can see you have nothing but love in this chat here, and people have nothing great things to say about you, and I can see why. So here you are in retirement. Tell us what if you could walk us through, what is retirement like for you? What have you been doing? What's some of the passions that you have other than police work? How do you spend your time?
Well, first thing is the blessing to wake up every morning. You got to keep moving. You know, if you got aches and pains, you got to keep moving. Walk around, pick up a book. Like, you have the brothers and sisters at the job. Now you have your co-workers, but you have your brothers. Like my ex-partner Tank or Ashby. We've been partners since I came on the job. So we'll talk once or twice a week. You know, wow. I got some of the guys that I knew as rookies. You know, shout out to one of my brothers in the 7th grade. I hope he gets better. And then there's a lot of things going on. So, people that you meet. So that's family. You know, the ones that you keep in contact with, or you try to keep in. The ones who don't want to keep in contact with, when they don't call you back. But you try to maintain close ties. Now to go back, just enjoy, the blessing that you have, and so just getting up in the morning and keep on moving. And while the guys are still on the job, make sure that that you keep the, if you're able to do the 50-50 increase take home, just keep padding your numbers the best to your ability, but still enjoy the job. When it's not coming enjoyable, then it's time to leave. When you start lashing out and angry and your blood pressure is going up, you're having mild strokes, heart attacks, whatever, it's time to go.
Are you doing any work in retirement? Or are you looking to do any work? Is there anything you'd be open to?
I was thinking about it, but then I'm like, I'll be 60 in 2 more years. So so I'm like, and then I don't run as fast like I used to. But I mean, I can catch you, but it'll take me 2 days, but I'll get to you.
Hey, 2 days is good, man. Whatever it takes.
But I right now I'm looking. If something comes my way, I mean, if they want to hire me for something, I'm there. Whatever I do, I'm gonna do it 200%. I don't do nothing half stepping.
I know you're out in the South right now. Of I don't want to say where you are unless you want to say. But is there anything you're into? Did you get into horses? Did you get into, now that you're outside New York? Did you get any hobbies? You playing golf? Everybody sucks at golf. I suck at golf. But what are you doing? Anything for fun?
What I do for fun, they got a lot of restaurants down here. They got the brisket. I find different barbecue spots to go to. I mean, my thing is, I'm not 16, but I do have my shot of whiskey. I'll go over there and hit that in a minute. Just enjoying. And I look up and I think Betty and Calvin. I just think my parents. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier about the kids. You got to have that foundation with the parents. Parents can't be afraid of their kids. If you got to put pause on your kids, you got to do it. The discipline goes a long way. Like I said, the picture behind me, he did 10 years military. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of my nephews, my niece, and everybody. Just having a strong foundation.
Oh, God bless, brother. Listen, it's been a great interview. We appreciate you spending your day with us, spending 2 hours in the morning. Is there anything that you wanted to bring out here that we didn't ask you? Anything that you like to highlight here today?
Well, I appreciate y'all inviting me on here, and the people that's responding, tell them much love. If you know me, you got my number. I'm always gonna pick up the phone. If you want me there, I'll be there. No questions asked. And so, I'm here. Want everybody to stay blessed and stay safe. And I pray, definitely for the citizens of New York City. I hope that things get better, but it's not going to get better. And you got to look at both sides. I'm not a political person and stuff like that, but but I understand certain things. And sometimes my family members, certain ones, they say, "Oh, don't get him started," but I'm started, but and I just want everybody to stay safe and blessed.
You know what I love most about these interviews? Normally we do interviews on Wednesdays every week, and we have all kinds of walks of life doing interviews. We have politicians, but mostly we have cops and retired cops. And what I love is that the police department is just so many different types of walks of life. Like we had you last week. We had Mike Mulroy. Before we had Pat Brosnan, and you just see all different types of personalities within the police department doing police work. And that's what's so interesting. There's so much different vibes. I love the interviews. We get the chance to memorialize your career. Your families get to see this. And I want to thank you for being so humble. And you embody what I've been talking about. We often talk about the police department. Oh, this guy's a nice guy. That person's a nice guy. And I always say, yeah, so what? Are they a good guy? And to me, you're a good guy. And that's the difference. You choose to be nice because you're strong, where people are nice because they're weak. And that's what I often say to people is, yeah, they're nice, but are they good? And you embody good moral character. You're a good person. And I want to say thank you, and I appreciate it. So,
thank you.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's a pleasure to meet you. I wasn't on social media during my career. I'm on it now, obviously with the network. But are you on social media at all? If people want to connect with you, can they find you? Other law enforcement people throughout the country, if they wanted to just get some advice about policing, can people find you?
I'm not on social media. I think the closest thing to social media to me is LinkedIn or WhatsApp. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram, nothing like that. But people who knows me, they have my number, and And people wants to find me, they can reach out to me.
And before we go, John, you got to ask him a question, man. You always ask that. I'm curious to hear his response. I think I already know, but I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ask every retired member of the service that comes on here, if you had to do it again, we bring you back to 1995 again. Would you take the test all over again? And now today we make you a young man again in 2026. Do you take the test today?
95, yes, I'll take the test. And if I had to take it again, based on what's going on right now, but my love for police and the community, I'll definitely do it again.
Yeah, I already knew that you would say yes to that. I mean, we've only had a couple of people actually say yes, but I knew that you're the type of guy that I think no matter what, you love the police department. I think you love people, which is great. And you obviously found the right calling. There's no doubt about it. I want to thank you so much for spending 2 hours and 5 minutes into it. I apologize if it's a long time, but man, this conversation was great. I enjoyed it. And really, thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it. And as John said earlier, is there anything else you want to add? We'd love to give you the last say. And again, keep being the man that you are. Don't ever change. And you're I know you said you're getting close to 60. You're still young. Go out there and kill it. Enjoy retirement. Enjoy your family. It's awesome.
Yes, sir. Yeah, everybody just stay safe. Country is here. Anytime y'all need me, I'm only a phone call away.
Awesome. All right, James, keep in touch. Listen, we'll love to have you back on one day if there's anything that gets you going and you want to come on and talk about it a little bit. We do talk a lot of politics. We talk about a lot of the issues that are going on. So if you ever want to join us for a day, let us know. We'd love to have you back on a Monday or a Friday on a roundtable. So
I'm here. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
All right, brother.
I'm gonna look you up one of these days. I travel by RV. We're gonna have some barbecue together. So yeah, James, man, thanks, brother.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, James.
You
Take
too.
care. All right. Yeah, that was awesome. That was an awesome interview. Had a great time. I think the audience really enjoyed it. We didn't even have any of our usual haters in here today. Some of them that were in here actually enjoyed it. So I was like, yeah, I was a little shocked by that. But great interview. I think I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm glad you guys did as well.
Oh man, I enjoyed that interview. I thought, first of all, I mean, I heard such great things about him, and he really lived up to it. And the chat, friends and listeners, say such things about him. What I know when I see someone like that, he's so humble. I'm like, this guy is actually far greater than we actually think he is. He's so experienced and has so much knowledge. He's so humble about it. That's, to me, you just know that he's super confident, and he was probably a fantastic cop, even better than we expect because of his humbleness. And that really says a lot about a person. We see someone so humble, and yet they have so much knowledge. Here's a guy who spent more time in the detective squad than some people had on the job completely, including myself. So super impressive, man. It was a pleasure, man. I really enjoy. I love our network, and I think Wednesdays have become my favorite day. Just hearing people speak about their careers and their lives. It's I enjoy it more than just us talking ourselves. Honestly, it's great.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's important. It's important for people to hear, because as everyone here knows, is that cops get painted with a broad brush, right? We're all the same, we're blue, we're this racist blue organization. And when you really break it down, I mean, the overwhelming majority of cops come from inner cities. And they come from really low income families and very, very diverse from all ends of the world, all ends of New York City, every type of spectrum, every type of religion, faith, sexual preference. So I think when you look at the diversity of the New York City Police Department, it's kind of hard to paint the police department with a broad brush, and I really liked his take. He said, when I joined the police department, I felt like I got drafted by the NBA. And I kind of had a similar feeling, dude. I kind of had that similar feeling, and I still do, and I'm still partial to it. I still always say, like, I'm like, yeah, I worked for the Yankees. It's kind of hard to go work for anybody else.
You just said something that really rang to my ears. That most of the people doing police work were like underprivileged and poor blue collar, working class. I know you and I both talk about that often. We grew up in pretty much poor working families. Everything that we had was earned. Either our families earned it or we earned it. And it's interesting. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you remember the movie Platoon. I watched that movie a million times, but probably one of the greatest movies ever. And in that movie, when Charlie Sheen is narrating in the beginning of the movie, he talks about how the troops that are in Vietnam are like the unwanted, and they're like the underprivileged people. They come from places unknown, and they're the ones that are doing the most for the country and care the most. I kind of think it's the same thing about police work. I'm really glad that you just said that right now. It makes me think like it's guys that are underprivileged, hard, never really had much in that life. They kind of gravitate towards police work and have the least, and yet want to do the most for people. So that's a good point. I don't know if you ever saw Platoon.
I never watched it, like like I said, my dad was in Vietnam, so he had real bad PTSD. So he never watched any war movies. He never talked about it. So like just out of respect for him, I really never did. But I am like, now that he's gone, maybe I should check that movie out. It sounds, but it's definitely true, dude. And then the other thing, like James, that rang with me is like I always used to say, like, the guys that were in the military or the guys that were in corrections and then rolled over to the NYPD, they were always just happy to be on the job. You know what I mean? Like you could tell those guys to do anything. Like, yo, I need you to stand here for 16 hours, not take a meal. Sun's going to blast on you. Don't go in the shade. Don't go in the store. Yeah, no problem. This job's great. Yeah, whatever you need me to do, boss. Like, and you could tell James, like what was his ethos? And he said that my ethos was, I just wanted to keep my job because I knew what it was like in the real world. And I think, the police department like brought all of us into a different social aspect into the world because, yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of kids that join are part of the unwanted. And then, you look that much differently in society once you become a cop and now later in life, no longer being in the department. And a lot of people squander that opportunity. A lot of people don't understand that. You get caught up in the bitching and the complaining about the politics and this and that and the other thing. And it doesn't kind of keep you grounded. And his grounding was, he remembered doing those securities. He remembered being in the military, making no money. So it was like, it's a good way to keep you grounded. So yeah. Great job.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. If you get a chance, I think you should watch, like I said, that's why I think that movie was so good, Platoon, because obviously there's parts in it that are about action, but it's not really about war. It's about what really happens at war and that people don't often talk about. Because, I was in Iraq, and a lot of guys here that are on this network who watch were active in a certain time in combat. And really, it talks about what really happens. Also, same thing in police work, right? The boredom, sometimes just what happens to camaraderie, the jokes, and, how people get where their minds go. And that's what's the same thing with police work. It's not always action. A lot of it is boredom and how people respond to each other. And it really is the unwanted doing the police work for everyone else. And same thing with, with the military. So yeah, definitely a must see, brother. Awesome show as always. Great guest, man. We've been really fortunate. I want to thank all the guests. If you watch, I want to thank all our guests who've come on this show and this network. If you've come on 10-4 Tavern, or also Executive Perspective, or our show here, I really appreciate you taking the time out. It's we live vicariously through them, hearing their experiences. I was never a squad guy. I was over the squad many times. I don't know why. I just wasn't interested. It just wasn't me. I love doing special ops. Everyone, and as James said it numerous times, right? Everyone has a different path. Just different career, and it really is amazing. There's a seat for every ass on the job, right? So we'd often say. So yeah, hell of a show, and I guess we might as well get the coffee and donuts and get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Let's absolutely do that. But before we do that, great interview last night, 10-4 Tavern with NYPD Detective Tommy Burke, retired auto crime legend. Really the guy when you think about any type of auto crime or auto theft. And I personally, obviously I'm biased from the NYPD, but I personally think he probably is the number one auto guy in the country. Never mind just in the NYPD or in New York City.
Well
so
said, brother. Well said.
He had a lot of good stories. And I'd love to hear more of him. Honestly, like there was I think he had a lot more to offer, but that was a great interview. And 100%. So Tommy, if you're listening, great interview yesterday. I think that they only got through like a fourth, maybe, like a fourth of the career.
That's a good point.
And a fourth of the knowledge, and like I'd like to hear a lot more of that. So I thought that was a real great show.
Yeah, I want to say shout out to Tommy Burke. I took the auto crime course myself. To this day, never the VIN numbers always stick in my head, and never look at a VIN number the same. So thank you to your contribution. Show was awesome. I think I think you hit it, John. You nailed it. He just has so much more to offer. We couldn't even get to it. So yeah, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Tommy, if you watch this, shout out to you.
Yeah, so go back, check out 10-4 Tavern from last night, and then tonight at the Executive Perspective, they're going to be talking about the NYPD captain that had a lot to say about
my hero,
Sohran Mandani. I'm sure we'll talk about it on Friday too, but I'm curious to hear Ron and Rob's take on it. I think there's a great debate raging about it, and I think rightfully so. So yeah, that should be a good show tonight. Plus everything that else is be happening, they'll be covering all of the protest situations, the NYPD cop that was just recently indicted for an attempted assault. Really going to a crazy place. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to that show tonight.
I also so I just want to give a shout out to Kenny Victoria, who's a cop in the 4-4 precinct. I want to just talk about pride and fortitude. So Kenny Victoria is a cop in the 4-4 precinct. He's also in the military, and he made an outstanding gun collar. And he was charged with assault to the perp. Just to keep in mind, fight with a perp in the 4-4 precinct, armed with a firearm, and just to show how bullshit these cases are, Kenny Victoria was offered a plea for disorderly conduct, and he would not take it. And yeah, he's actually taken to trial, and his trial started today at 9 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. So I want to give a shout out to him. God bless you for your fortitude, but it's unfortunate right now. Here are cops out there in the streets doing their job, trying to help the citizens of New York, and he's facing the challenge himself. And I watched the body cam video. I've seen it. It wasn't leaked by him. I don't want him getting in trouble or anything like that. I've seen it. It's been leaked numerous places. I'm not the only one who's seen it. And he did a hell of a job. Fantastic job. So if anyone, if you know Kenny Victoria, and if you don't, doesn't matter. If you're in the NYPD, you should show some support in any way you can. Contact the union. Show him support. He deserves it. So Kenny Victoria, shout out to you, brother. And thank you for being out there. I never got a chance to speak to the young man. I spoke to a lot of people, told me about the case, and I wish him nothing but luck. And it's unfortunate, but we're with you, brother.
No, it's a scary situation. It's an NYPD cop being charged with. He's being charged with a felony, right? But they'll let him plead out to disorderly conduct just so they show that just shows how bullshit their case is. Me and Eric talked about it a little bit offline yesterday, and I was like, I got to be honest. I think if as long as I'm keeping my job, I think I would just take the plea, even though I knew I didn't do anything. And I didn't do anything wrong. And so, absolutely shows a lot of fortitude, a lot of courage, a lot of strength. So I wish him all the best. And I hope the truth prevails. And I hope the criminal justice system prevails in bringing out that truth. Just the fact that you're going from charging a cop with a felony to now you want him to plead to a disorderly conduct charge just shows how that case has no teeth whatsoever. And hopefully, the judge or the jury, whatever he picked, sees through that. And just another case that I think NYPD unions have proven themselves to really be neutered and to be emasculated and to not do good enough job at bringing public attention to this and to really putting out in the media what NYPD cops are facing. And there's no way to fix something that's never going to be acknowledged. It's impossible to be fixed. And unless we're going to start acknowledging your union's supposed to be your mouthpiece for you to do that. And so I think I blame a lot of you guys too for not holding their feet to the fire. I do. Yeah.
You know what the shame about it is? Here's the reality. No matter what, his career in the NYPD is done. Whether he's found not guilty, which I hope, but God forbid it, either way, his career is done. He's not going to either want to do police work. He can't do police work. That eye is always on him, and that's a shame about it. a young man who's also in the military, clearly was doing intrusive police work, wanted to do the job, but no longer can. So unfortunately, we have someone that's going to ride out their career till their pension who really can't do police work. And so it's the cops are being attacked on all angles. And I just, he needs a support system. And when we hear from the unions that they're going to pack courtrooms, it's not enough. We need more. Just packing courtrooms is not enough. And unfortunately, when you're in a pickle in the NYPD, you find out it's like going to your funeral. You're on your own.
Yeah, scary times, man. Scary times. All right, let's get to the coffee and donuts. We got Anthony. He says, great interview. Gives us a thumbs up. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate you, brother. Upstate Detective. Good morning, brothers. Great show as usual. Morning. Hope all is well.
Good morning.
Stay safe out there.
Coffee and donuts.
Reckoning Cage with $100, $99.99. He says, great guest to have on your show, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Yeah. Appreciate all your comments that you brought in. Yeah, he seemed very beloved in the New York City police.
Dude, James is great, man. James, if you're still watching, brother, man, awesome interview, dude. Super cool, brother. Appreciate it.
He also says he is also a hilarious guy to work with as well. Yeah,
you can say that. You can say he was a scary dude with that PR-24. Like, yeah, no joke.
Yeah, no, he's a big dude. Yeah, you see a big bold dude walking around with a PR-24. Yeah, of course the trains were safe that day.
Club of Williams would have loved him.
Club of Williams, baby. Finest 25, Affronti, present for duty. I remember in the 83 precinct as a rookie in 1988, the saying was, Patrol Borough, Brooklyn North, you give us 22 minutes, we'll give you a homicide.
Holy shit. Wow. Those were the days, huh?
Yeah, crazy. I just saw, I what did I see recently? All of you guys that are on Instagram, check out Underdog Patch. They do a lot of NYPD patches. They got a lot of cool patches. But I just saw one because do you remember that Mike Mulroy? He was talking about how Pat Brosnan said that the 4-6 is the most dangerous square mile.
Yeah. He said, and then he said the 4-4 was. Yeah.
But he said the 4-4 really was. But I just saw Underdog Patch, and I meant to text it to you guys.
I got his book, man.
He put the 4-6. They made a patch, Underdog Patch. And they make really nice patches. He made a patch that had 4-6 most dangerous square mile in America, and then he had a bunch of streets listed on it. So it was cool. So check them out. They're on Instagram. I believe retired NYPD. So good dude though.
Yeah, and check out The Silence We Carry by Mike Mulroy. Man, I'm gonna start cracking this book. So that was another great. Talk about Humble, right? James Humble and Mike Mulroy, just Humble, and these guys got so many stories. That's what's. Yeah, they got a lot of stories in their pocket, So I'm impressed.
Yeah, and Crazy 10-7 says the old inapplicable days. Yeah, and I think Monday we missed coffee and donuts from Mike Smith, so apologize, Mike.
Oh yeah, Mike, we got you, brother.
We caught it at the end. I don't remember what the hell it was though. My brain's not.
It wasn't something about Holly this time. That's why we didn't remember. If it was about Holly, bro, we would have announced
it. He doesn't want to get him promoted again, so he's not talking about it. So, all right, peoples. All right, so we'll be back to you on Friday. Make sure you join us tonight, 5:05 p.m. Eastern Time, Executive Perspective. So, anything before we run, Eric?
No, awesome. Listen, the chat was cool today, man. We're missing Nin and Juju. They must be busy. I don't know. I guess maybe they're in a meeting together. I don't know what's going on there, but shout out to everyone. If you want to be a guest at the Finest Unfiltered, please contact us. If you're retired, if you're active, we don't bring on active members. We don't want to get you in trouble. But if you're retired, memorialized, been retired for 2 months or 20 years, it's a good time to tell your story. Your families get an opportunity to watch and hear about your career, because most of us don't talk about our police experiences at home. This is an opportunity where a platform that you could actually talk about, your families can watch it. Good time to remember. These are the real stories. Thank you so much.
All right, Finest Unfiltered, people. See you tonight, 5:05 p.m.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?